Well, the only good thing about doing the live streams is I can still use the old Markcast music. We've changed that on the podcast. We are here today, XFL QB Selection Day with John Vogel. How are you doing, sir?
Great, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
This is exciting. So happy Commanders Victory Tuesday. I just have to throw that out there. A big game last night, was on the edge of my seat. And now we are here today, hopefully selecting the next Taylor Heineke, right? The next guy that's going to get picked up by one of these teams. We have names. We'll go through here at the kickoff, and then it'll start here at 11. This is just a teaser for tomorrow. The big shebang tomorrow. John will be back. I have lots of names I'm going to post after the episode today, but John will be back tomorrow. We have Andrew Murray coming back on. Lots of excitement tomorrow. And then we also were supposed to have one of the XFL quarterbacks calling into the show today, courtesy of the XFL. So that is exciting. John, how are you? Talk through excitement here. We have 15 minutes until the quarterback selection show.
You know, there's a bunch of really interesting guys, you know, and I like where they're targeting. The XFL is going after younger guys right now. And you know, one of the things when they started, you know, a couple of years ago back in 2020, I think was they went after some, you know, bigger names and they landed a few of them. They're not doing that this time. They're understanding their role, which is that we are trying to put people in the NFL. That's why people are going to play for us. And they're doing that really well. I think the list of guys here, there's a bunch of really interesting dudes. They just need more reps, need more time. And they have a legit shot to, most of them have a legit shot to go up.
Yeah, it was interesting because when the names came out, and we'll go through them here, we have the list. They will, I see a comment here. So we are going to show the stream. Stream's not going yet. Stream will start at 11. So we're prefacing, that'll kick off at 11. So you're in the right spot. We're doing a little prefacing stuff here. Yeah, I do think people, when the names came out yesterday, you know, Ben DiNucci, probably the most just known just because he was on the Cowboys. Everyone knows that. It does seem like the XFL, like you said, we're cultivating more. We're finding these diamonds and like, hey, we're going to pay Landry Jones $750,000 to come play for the Arlington Renegades. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think there's obviously going to be guys that are going to come in down the road, right? I think that's obvious. You know, when you look at the list, it's not everybody's going to have two quarterbacks at the end of the day. So this is an open thing. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes right now. But yeah, I think I like what they've done. I like the list that's out already. The way that they're running this whole operation, they're looking at long-term success and they know where their niche is going to be and they're hitting it.
Yeah, so we got the list here, courtesy, and Kevin Seifert, friend of the show, put out yesterday, updated a little bit because it was interesting. Yeah, Derek King on there as one of the potential, and then obviously PJ Walker, you know, MVPJ back in the, you know, for the Roughnecks, goes down in Carolina. They signed him to the practice squad, so now we're down to 12 quarterbacks right now. This is on ESPN, and then they'll be announcing that. Who stood out to you the most of the 12, and we'll kind of dive through here.
Right. So I think out of, you know, taking Ben DiNucci aside, because he's obviously the most accomplished here. He started games in the NFL, Sunday Night Football. If we remember that, you know, that was a lot of fun as an Eagles fan, which, you know, I'll accept your shots about Washington to start off the show. It's fine. I'll just shake it off. 8-1. We're good. But no, he started, you know, that Sunday night game against the Eagles, which, you know, that really put him on the map in terms of NFL fans. But some guys that, you know, maybe aren't as well known as him. I think a dude that really stands out to me is obviously the first guy on the list that's right there, Eric Dungey. I love Dungey. This was a fun kid at Syracuse where it was just he's got a very interesting skill set where he can run pretty well. He's got a decent arm. He was pretty he got accurate, you know, over his career, and he just hasn't been able to stick it around in the NFL yet. I think that he's one of those guys that just needs more reps and more experience. And then this is a guy that I really liked. He's a little bit farther down the list. Anthony Russo, who was the starting quarterback at Temple years ago. He kind of has that Ben Roethlisberger type build and maybe not as strong of an arm, but still has that, you know, he can push the ball down the field decently well. And transferred to Michigan State his final year, which he didn't end up playing. He lost out the job, I think, to Thorson, who's currently starting there now. But he's pretty darn accurate. He's got a really nice touch ball, and he was one of my favorite quarterbacks a few years ago in college.
Yeah, so you see it, and we'll be slipping back and forth. So we've got the XFL. I got 9 minutes here, so we're going to kind of talk through that. We can even talk through the USFL announcing their big announcement today as well, and then we'll have it on here. So we'll talk alongside. You can watch it on the XFL YouTube. You watch it here. I don't think we'll get copyright for that kind of stuff if we're kind of commentating over everything that's going on, but that'll be exciting. So we'll talk through. The other, some of these other names like Silvers that was on before, like we know some of these guys. We know that the XFL 2020 people are able to be back in this time, right? They're kind of like grandfathered in at least to the draft pool that way. Do you see Silvers? I've had a lot of even people that are in Seattle with me asking about Silvers.
Yeah, so obviously he hasn't done anything really since he played in the XFL. I think that speaks a lot to where he, the different leagues viewed him. Now, I don't believe he also tried to play in the Spring League in 2021, which obviously became the USFL. I don't think he was trying for that. But this is a good opportunity for him just to see if we've seen that experience. He's going to be one of the oldest quarterbacks in this, in this draft, if not the oldest. And he, arm talent is kind of limited with him. And I think that's one of the things that slowed him down for being a professional quarterback. But he's one of those guys that you want to build a little West Coast style to, and you want to be able to push the ball to the perimeters within 10, 15 yards and just try to get him as effective at doing that. When he's on, he's on. He looks great. When he's off, it's not good at all.
28 here. 28. I still remember that Spring League game. Brandon coming in second half for the Conquerors, just absolutely laying dimes for that might be his last blaze of glory here. If he comes into the XFL as a backup, that's great. Take a paycheck, support. He can help teach the guys. But I will always remember that Brandon Silvers. I was sitting out on my porch watching and him coming in and just absolutely just like a man possessed coming in. But I don't see him on there. The other name I'm interested. DeAndre Francois, former FCF guy. We've had them on the show. Ray Austin, commissioner of the league and all that. Do you have any thoughts on DeAndre?
Yeah, so DeAndre was a really interesting guy because I remember one of his first starts, if not his first start, he played at Florida State against Ole Miss, and he went off. That was a game that Florida State was not favored to win. They won, I believe, by a touchdown. He was throwing the ball all over the yard. He looked great. And then what kind of happened was with him was some off the field stuff. It got him kicked out of Florida State. He went down to Hampton where he finished up his career. And, he's bounced around with, like you mentioned, fan control football. I saw him with the Blues when he played in the Spring League last year. He's got the tools, right? He's got all the tools that you want in a quarterback, at least in somebody who can be effective 20, 30 yards down the field. But, you just want to make sure that he's consistent. That's the biggest thing with the quarterback position is consistency, and it's the hardest thing to find in that position group as well. As long as he can answer, all the stuff behind, closed doors in the interviews and, explain all of that happened. It's not stuff that I'm very familiar with, so I don't want to comment too much on it. But that's usually what's held him back, I think, is, some of those concerns and the trouble that he's been in. This is a good opportunity for him to kind of start to show, hey, I'm a mature guy. That's all past me. I can sit on a roster.
What I like about it also just is fan control football does really kind of like they act like they're out on their own island. And I like seeing here the progression of same with the XFL now. We have the IFL partnership and we can move guys to the arena leagues. I like this. I can be someone, get a chance in the FCF, obviously, like you said, the Spring League, merging into the USFL, whatever. But I like that we can progress around. I like that all of these leagues kind of coexist that way, and these players keep showing up. And guys go, oh yeah, like they're really hardcore fans. It's like Easter eggs, like Leonardo DiCaprio on the couch, like aha, like I see. Yep. I like that. I like that we can follow these guys in the course of that. We have a question from Evan here, and we were talking ahead of time. Probably the least familiar person we know of, Caleb Ellaby. Thoughts on him? I think you said that probably the least known of any of the guys on here.
Yeah, so Ellaby was, he came out in the draft this past year out of Western Michigan, where he showed, it was an RPO centric offense that they ran. They had a couple of good running backs. He showed that he could move a little bit. He's not a great runner, but he had a good arm. He had some really great speed on the outside that he was able to use a lot. Now, when he came out, there was a lot of people in the draft media side talking about it being a potential 4th, 5th round pick. And he had another year of eligibility. He probably should have taken it. I got some bad advice. He went ahead and entered the draft, and he did not have that kind of grade across the NFL. And so this is kind of his rebound effort, right, where he needs more experience. We want to see him outside of an RPO centric offense. We want to see him, do some traditional drop back stuff because they didn't really do that at all at Western Michigan. But he's got some decent size. He can move around a little bit in the pocket. I think he could be an effective scrambler down the field. Maybe not, great, but this is another one of those guys where it's just, hey, reps. He's young. He's got a lot that he can build on. We just need to refine some of the passing mechanics with him.
Yeah, exciting that way. The other name that popped up, I'm seeing a lot in the chat, Kurt Benkert, just tweeting literally before we got on here, him being released from the 49ers. Not going to be in this today, certainly not meaning that he could not be in the XFL. Thoughts on him? He had even on his show, I think a couple of months ago now at this point, it talked about, talking with the XFL, figuring out kind of contract stuff like that. Any thoughts on Kurt?
Yeah, I think he would be a great fit for them. He fits that mold again. He would be one of the most experienced guys coming in. Benkert himself, he's been a backup, a third string quarterback in the league for a while. Honestly, he's got a great future as a commentator as well. So that's kind of up to him with what he wants to do. He's a very good people person. But that's what's made him popular on the teammate side, right? If you look at his Twitter account, it's not often that you see, a social media account for a third string quarterback with 46,000 followers, right? Or whatever he's at now. He might be at 50 now. I don't know. But he's just a popular guy because he's fun. He'd be a good fit in the locker room, whether he plays or not. I think he could at this level. But no, he'd be a great fit for them. I think that's something to look forward to.
Max has a question here. Quentin Dorbady, he had no idea who he was before Monday. I think Mike Mitchell, I guess, has called him the doormat now. I don't know the context of that, but thoughts on that? We got 3 minutes here. You can see, we got you all covered with the stream, but thoughts on Quentin?
So Quentin is, I remember him back when he was at Tennessee. He was the backup quarterback to Joshua Dobbs at Tennessee before he transferred over to, I guess he went through Houston. I don't remember him being at Houston at all, but I remember him at Central Michigan. He's got good size. He's got a good arm. He just needs to refine some of the finer details. His footwork I remember was not great. And so footwork obviously is one of the most important things at that position, right? Because if you don't have good footwork, you're not going to be throwing off a good base. And if you're not throwing off a good base, you're not going to be accurate. And that was kind of his issue. It's sometimes that's, something we've seen guys improve on it. Josh Allen, notably, in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills, when he came out of Wyoming, did not have great footwork. And it was what sold him as a first-round prospect was he went with Jordan Palmer, who, all these guys are working with right now, and, showed that in the span of 4 weeks from the combine to his pro day, he had improved his footwork drastically. And so it's really about breaking that, what's the word I'm looking for? It's muscle memory. Where you've been doing this for so long. Dormandy's one of those guys where he's a flyer. You're hoping that he can do that. And if he can be a pretty good passer. He's got a good arm.
2 questions here. We got a minute and a half, so we'll split it here. Grading Jordan Palmer working with the guys. Your thoughts on that? XFL deciding he's the guy to go with.
I mean, he's one of the best quarterback coaches, in the country right now for a reason. He's worked with a lot of different guys and they've had great results. Bo Nix is another guy right now that he's worked with a lot. Bo Nix left Auburn, went to Oregon. Now he's a Heisman candidate. And I think that's for a good reason. It's because Jordan has a really good way of working with guys and being able to build that stuff. Them deciding that he's the guy they want to work with is perfect because that's what this league is. It's developing football players. He's a great guy for that.
Noah, they're picking here. They're starting up in a minute, so we're doing the kind of the preface breakdown. Final thoughts, and obviously they're going to add a lot more guys here, through in the end of NFL and the USFL contracts. But grade these names on a scale of F to A. What do you make of these first 12 names?
I would say right now, considering all things, it's a solid B, right? Because there's a few guys here that could potentially make that jump. We've talked about that in a little bit. There's going to be depth, with at this position as well, because they will add people, especially as this goes on, and other things in the background. People leave the NFL, whatever, all that stuff. They're going to get all that figured out. But this is a good depth group, right? Where you're going to have a capable backup. And if you don't get your guy today, you got time to get him.
Perfect. All right, here we go. We're starting the stream here. Keep in mind, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to do all the draft stuff.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the UFC Apex here in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Stormy Bonantoni of ESPN and VSiN. Cannot thank you all enough for being here on what's obviously such an exciting day for the XFL, for all of its fans.
What do you think of them doing everything in Vegas, John?
The head coaches, as we announced.
I mean, you want to talk about a place where you can find out if a guy's serious about football or not? That's the place.
Series of events centralized around this incredible and revolutionary league. Later on this evening,
I kind of thought they were going to do the Texas thing, but surprised at that. Yeah, they're also doing the drive tonight. You're going to be able to talking about doing the drive tonight, pre-show for the XFL draft tomorrow. Looks very much like things we've seen before. Dwayne is player 54. We're excited. We're talking about the brand. I don't see a lot of like player insights, anything. I think it's going to be mostly like condensed version of what Dwayne and Danny have done with the XFL.
Yeah, promo type stuff, which is fine. They need to do that for this league. They need to raise the awareness, and Dwayne is one of the best at promo, if you think about it.
And we got Danny Garcia here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. What an incredibly exciting day. We are so happy to be here. As Stormy was saying, our coaches are about to start this incredible
coach you're most excited to see, John, in terms of the 8 that have been hired by the XFL.
Oh, man, that's a good question. Probably Hines, right? Hines he's a head coach, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. Yep. Because he's a great wide receiver coach, right? And we've seen that at the different levels that he's been at. He got involved, obviously, with the AAF, which I missed most of, unfortunately. I was in basic combat training for that. That was great.
Well, that's...
you kind of graduate 2 months later and you're like, what happened? Oh, okay, great. Awesome. But I'm interested to see him, especially with the success we just saw Jeff Saturday have in the NFL against the Raiders. After all the talk about, former players that, don't have any coaching experience, Hines is kind of there. He's got a little bit of coaching experience, not head coaching. So I think he's going to be the most interesting guy to see.
Let's go indeed.
All right, here we go.
Our quarterbacks for the 2023 XFL season. First up, the Arlington Renegades. Welcome to the stage, head coach Bob.
I got to talk with Bob in Arizona. Oh, Drew Plitt. Here we go.
Dang.
Unfortunately, could not be here with us today, but Slaughter has been rostered by 7 NFL teams, most recently the Jaguars. And
Kyle Slaughter.
Wow. Drew Plitt, Kyle Slaughter. Wow. First shots fired against the USFL.
MVP of the Arizona Bowl.
Does Slaughter still have a contract with them? Because I think he got terminated because he went to sign with the Jaguars. Did he not?
Correct. So him signing with the Jaguars, correct. That got him out of it, and he was able to. Now the quarterbacks that were signed afterward, they were not. They were locked in for 3. I'm going to keep this down just so we don't get too much copyright. Yes, that is interesting. Kyle Slaughter going to the NFL is what allows him now to be in the XFL. Thoughts on Drew Plitt? Big name.
Yeah, so Plitt, really interesting guy at Ball State, played in the MAC, put up really gaudy numbers, if I remember correctly. Like he had a couple really good years while he was there. He's got a decent arm. He's a West Coast kind of guy, which is interesting because I think that Bob Stoops is going to run more of a spread. He likes to run more of a vertical spread. So they're going to be betting on those two guys to be able to, whichever one ends up starting, which I would probably bet it'd be Plitt at this point. Maybe not week 1, but I think Plitt's going to end up being the starter.
We see here, USFL is done. Already, shots fired. I don't go that far. Oh, Brandon Silvers, my quarterback of the XFL Dragons here. Going to the Roughnecks.
Well,
this is
a Dungy too.
Caleb Ellaby and Brandon Silvers going with Wade Phillips and the Houston Roughnecks.
That's interesting because if you think about it, Wade Phillips. He's run so many different offenses or been involved with so many different offenses. We don't know what he's really going to come out here trying to do. Silvers is going to give him some, a little bit of mobility. Both of them give him a little bit of mobility. They might be going to an RPO type offense. It might be going heavy RPO over here.
Do you think so obviously you said Caleb a little less known, right? Do you think they bring in Silver as, okay, we got the trusty, veteran, he can kind of help shape him. We got to reduce training camp. We're kind of getting ready to go.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it. I'm not sure who would start week 1 at this point. They're both pretty even, I think. This is going to be a good quarterback room.
It's so good to see Brandon Silvers again. I'm really excited. The longest running joke for the longest time on our podcast was that Brandon Silvers looked like a guy that was on The Bachelor. And so I always said that he lived on. All right, Vegas Vipers here, Rob Woodson. We still don't have a venue for the Vipers to play in, but hopefully they're going to have quarterbacks there. This is going quick. Noah asked how quick this is going fast. Oh, Luis Perez going to Vegas. Jalen McClendon and Luis Perez.
Oh my goodness!
What do you make of seeing Luis Perez back? This is
Perez
so exciting.
is a surprise, man. I mean, wow. I thought he still had a USFL contract for some reason.
So did he got signed by the Rams, right? He was in and then he got cut.
I was not tracking that.
This all comes around to those contracts they had, where if you were signed before April or it was like the month into the season, they changed the contracts. But if you were in that initial group that was signed, and most of the quarterbacks were, if you got signed by the NFL team, you couldn't do XFL, CFL. But if you went to the NFL, then you were free to go. Otherwise, it reverted back.
These couldn't be two more polar opposite types of quarterbacks.
Yeah,
McClendon has a big arm. He's not too accurate yet, but he can run. And Perez has a limited arm. He's pretty accurate and can't run. These are polar opposite quarterbacks right here. That's interesting.
I just had one of my friends, Seth, text me. He goes, so the XFL just stole all the USFL quarterbacks.
Yeah, they basically just did. Who we have?
Quentin Dormandy and DeAndre Francois. This is going to be fun to break down. This is going to be, this is chaos right now, and then we'll really be able to stop.
Well, because we've already had two names pop up that wasn't even on the list. We weren't even expecting to see.
No. This is crazy. MVP Perez.
Yeah, this is interesting too. I mean, these are pretty similar quarterbacks, I think, in terms of their skill set. Obviously, you can see the size difference. Francois is only about 6'1". Dormandy's not going to be as athletic, I don't think, as Francois. Francois definitely has a little bit more, juice and can move. But this is interesting. Orlando looks like they're probably going to be going with a West Coast old, think. I'm trying to think like they're going to go probably with an old type 49ers type offense.
Ooh, I like that. We have the Guardian hats do look good. I don't love the green, but that looks nice. I like the trim on there. That looks hot. I would buy that. All they have for sale right now are trucker hats. I would definitely buy that.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. The Brahmas. Your number one coach here, Heinz Ward, coming on. So it looks like every team's going to have two quarterbacks.
They just say Russo?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Jawan Pass and Anthony Russo.
React.
So I remember how I said that Anthony Russo is basically, he's very similar in build and skill set to Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, what does that tell you right there? Yeah. Who did Heinz play with at the end of his career in Pittsburgh? Ben Roethlisberger. They won a Super Bowl, right?
Well, and it seems like they've tailored this to Heinz too. Like, we'll give you the black and yellow. We're going to give you the really cool brand here. We're going to give you, it really does seem, I like it. I mean, Heinz is a swing. I like that. Let's bring him in. It's a big name. Everyone I've interviewed is excited to see what Heinz is going to do here. And two really exciting quarterbacks here.
Yeah, and Pass is a little bit more, more athletic. He had a big arm too, right? I think the reason he didn't get looked at really when he came out of, I believe it was Alcorn State he came out of, right? I'm going to double check that.
We have comments here. Yeah,
no,
this is so great.
My bad. Prairie View A&M. Yeah, he needs a lot of time to refine, what he can do. But he's got the vertical ability. They're definitely going to be going spread. They're going to be airing the ball out and pushing it down the field.
We have a comment here. No, it doesn't bother me. No jerseys. We're going to get all that. We got to get through the draft. We're going to do that in December. We didn't have jerseys when we did draft before. All right, here we go. Kaka. A lot of people are going to be excited here.
Yeah, this is the big team right here. This is what everybody's going to be watching the XFL for.
Yes. Okay.
19 passing yards in 2016 before transferring to Virginia Tech to close
Ryan Willis and AJ
And
McCarron.
AJ McCarron. Oh my goodness. McCarron just got cut by the Bengals this year, I think.
Yeah, that's what they just said on there. Yeah, I'm kind of, I can hear a little bit here behind. And then Ryan Willis on here. Ryan Willis, it was on the Bears, right? I think he played for, it was on the.
Won a
Did he make-
championship in the spring league, Pat, last year too. Yep. He's this is interesting. They're both similar quarterbacks in terms of they're not going to push the ball down the field, but they're going to be accurate within 15, 20 yards consistently. And Willis definitely has some more wheels than AJ McCarron does. Willis can move, he can run. So this is interesting. I think they're going to have some different RPO spread type infused stuff, I think. But they're going to be a lot more of a RPO offense.
I'm really curious to see what Beck does here. I mean, kind of open, like, what does Anthony Beck's football team look like? I think he is one of the most intriguing, and there's a lot of eyeballs on him. Like you said, this is like the franchise team of the XFL.
Yeah, and it's what we talked about, and I mentioned Heinz Ward, right? Beck is right there, but I don't know if Beck has much coaching experience, like at least compared to Ward. He might be even less than that, because I remember he was calling college football games a couple years ago for ESPN. Now he's coaching a team. So
Darren wants to is Josh Rosen.
Yeah, he might be. We don't know now, man.
This is. Well, I know we had the 12 we were talking about, and now this is. Here we go. My team, the Sea Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Ben DiNucci is coming to Seattle. What? What?
I'll be honest. I had a feeling that he was going to go there because it made a lot of sense, and I had heard some rumors, so that makes sense. But Montez is interesting. Yeah, Montez is really interesting.
So Steven Montez, that was the one. Yeah, that was the one that's been rumored. Mike Mitchell has had a lot of these initial placements for a lot of these spot on. I want to give Mike Mitchell all the credit in the world for that. But did never see Ben DiNucci going to a June Jones offense.
It's going to be good. It's going to be a good setup. And, DiNucci is going to get pushed a little bit by Montez, I think, just because Montez is a little bit more athletic and he can push the ball farther down the field than DiNucci can. But it's going to be about consistency again. It always is with these types of things. So I would say DiNucci will start for sure, but Montez is going to be interesting if he plays.
So you placed DiNucci as the starter?
Yeah, 1,000%. So I watched Montez at the 2020 Senior Bowl a couple years ago. He was on a roster with Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert. And let's just say that it was not even close.
All I want is a bright orange Sea Dragons hat right now. That's all I want to have on my head.
I'm sure as soon as this thing's over, that'll be for sale. You can go get one.
I have to order it on the podcast. This is tremendous. I like, and whether DiNucci is great or not, that I like that they're getting the big name there. I like Seattle's getting the, just most casual fans will be like, oh yeah, I know that. Look at this group. Look at this motley group here. DC Defenders.
Mm-hmm.
This has been tremendously exciting. Dungy, and then I missed the first one.
Did they say another one?
Yeah, they got two.
He played for the Syracuse Orange in college, where he became one of just 5 ACC quarterbacks all time.
Where's our graphic?
Why
aren't they?
There we go. Oh, no,
there we
just
go.
Eric
Finally.
Dungy. Just Dungy.
Interesting. Okay, DC. The last time around they had Cardale Jones, right? This is going a little bit of a different direction, right? Because Dungy is going to be more mobile. He can get out of the pocket. He can run. You can infuse some, quarterback run designs, and he's going to be able to push the ball pretty well. It's going to be fun.
Jake, if you're watching this stream, those DC Defender hats look sharp. Look really sharp. Still looks like Dallas. But that is a sharp looking hat. I really like that.
That is a beautiful setup. Honestly.
I
love this. This has been great. Four extra quarterbacks came out of nowhere.
This was far more exciting than I thought it was going to be. It was good. Yeah, the Rock is just a big winner. This is the if I was doing like a real episode this week with the title, it would be like the XFL stealing the USFL's lunch money or something. Like, did the XFL just bully the?
Congratulations.
Let's see if we get any other tidbits here, and then I'm sure they'll give us a list and we can break all this down.
The first step.
Overall, just initial thoughts. What do you have to say, John?
I love how they didn't tell us about a few of these guys and they just brought them up on the stage or announced their names. That's great. That definitely gives us a lot to talk about, especially with some of the guys they brought in. And it's funny because we were talking about it looks like they're targeting younger guys that need more reps, but they brought in a couple experienced here guys. AJ McCarron, big experienced guy, right? Where he's been around for a long time. He played at Alabama. So you got some brand coming in with it too. I mean, really well done across the board, I think. Well set up.
So there we go. So let's get out of this. I'm sure they'll give us a list here. There we go. We'll refresh. I'm sure we'll get or I'll get a press release here coming up in a minute. We got draft news. Let's get out of that. So initial comments, if people have any thoughts on there, they have the question. So Derek King, where do you think they would have ended up? Where do you think Derek King would have ended up?
Derek King would have been he was going to be the number 1 overall pick. Yeah. I heard that from a couple people before he signed. He was supposed to be the number 1 guy. I believe he was supposed to go to DC. And that's why it kind of got shuffled up a little bit. But yeah, no, that's interesting. And it would have made sense because Dungy, athletic, couldn't get outside the pocket. King, athletic, gets outside the pocket, might be better playing at the next level at a different position. But no, that's King would have definitely. I think King was headed for DC 1,000%.
Well, that makes sense, right? I mean, there was only, and they got to give us the list here, but Arlington, they had the one that didn't make it, and then DC was the only one I believe that didn't have 2 quarterbacks selected in there. Have to imagine that would have been where that was. Obviously, we can remedy that. The Panthers are not making it to the Super Bowl.
I think St. Louis was the only one that had 1 quarterback outside of DC. St. Louis has got, I forget who it was now. It was just one guy.
We need they're still showing. Yeah, we need to get the list on here because that was 2. Who got King for sure. If anyone can comment in the chat, who was the St. Louis? It was just Willis, right? No, it was. Now I'm like, come on, XFL. Where's my press release here?
I'm sitting here refreshing their Twitter page too, going,
is it on there?
No, it's not. They just have a link to the quarterback selection right now. That's the last thing they had. No list or anything yet.
Okay, Willis and McCarron. There we go. Willis and McCarron. So obviously, I think DC, that was the big. Derek King would have been on there. Where do you rank? So Max had on here, he just put the grades go from D+ to B-. Where do you put, now seeing what the names actually were versus, I think you had it in a B before when we talked before this. Where do you put the quarterbacks?
One of the biggest things when you're building one of these leagues is you don't want to just, I talked about getting the niche, which is what they did with that initial list, the first 12 guys that we had. That's a niche. Developmental guys that need more reps, that just need to be, they need more focused coaching. They hit all of that. And then the second part is what you want to do is you do want to have some guys that bring brand, that bring experience, that can help back those guys up. And honestly, with the surprise names that they just dropped on us, they did that. They hit the big school, Alabama. Now you got Alabama people tuning in because they want to watch AJ McCarron. They love AJ McCarron, still do at Alabama after, what he did down there. The other thing too is this opens up the door, and really sets the stage for tomorrow, because now that we know where the quarterbacks are, we kind of can get an idea of where they're going to be going with some of the different personnel decisions that they start making, the picks that they start making on the different positions, because now we kind of have an idea of what skill sets they're looking for. If you're going to run a more traditional offense, you're going to want a power running back. If you're going to run a spread or an air raid, you want a faster, smaller scat back. So once we start seeing that stuff pop up, it'll make more sense. But it's all about building the brand. They did a good job with that. And they just did it. They just dropped it on our head, basically. Like they just brought in these big, alt football power names and just said, deal with it.
And we'll go once we get the list here, we'll go team by team. I really want to get, like you said, kind of figuring out what offense these teams are going to run. While we have a lot of viewers here, keep in mind, we're going to be here all day tomorrow, 8:15 a.m. Pacific, all day. John's joining for a large chunk. John has been great so far. So obviously, if you want to hear more what John has to say tomorrow, I have a lot of other like fantasy scout people, a lot of XFL News Hub friends, all those people joining. So make sure you tune back in tomorrow for that. Going to be really exciting. Just like and subscribe. We're here all we're here all the time. We do a show every week, every Friday. If this is the first time you've tuned in, we usually do about a 2-hour show, cover XFL, USFL, CFL. I will be in Regina for the Grey Cup on Saturday. We'll have a live pregame show for that, so that will be exciting as well. Was there any names that we, except for Derek King, that we didn't see that maybe we thought we were going to see?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to say the other one right now. I don't know. I do think that there's still going to be a couple guys that we're going to see float up into this league that are still kind of waiting on some different stuff.
You mean USFL guys?
Yes, I think there's at least one more coming. I do. Yes.
Well, we can talk openly. Brian Scott. I mean, Brian Scott was cited at. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, no, that's definitely what I'm talking about.
No, I mean, Brian, it's public knowledge. Brian was at Jordan Palmer's training camps. I mean, we've reported it. Where that's a good question. Where do you think Brian Scott fits into where you've seen all the quarterbacks now?
That's what I'm sitting here trying to figure out. And I'm trying to find this list. If I can get the list.
Yeah, this is insane. I've refreshed. I have my email.
Yeah, I keep refreshing. I just finally ditched that, and I've totally gone to Twitter search. I'm not getting a complete list.
That's the other question now too, because it has been reported that Teamu, with Memphis coming out today, and they had their new quarterback, that Teamu could be headed to the XFL. So it'll be curious to see where. Okay, thank God we have the list. Where is it? I have the press release here. Let me tweet this out. I got to get my stuff up here, and then I will take everything else. So why don't you kill time for 30 seconds and give us a general overview of what you've thought so far?
Okay, so this first off, I loved the presentation. The presentation was great, quick, but to the point. But bringing the names up, like we said, dropped all the different. It's the word I'm looking for. We went with all the guys that we knew were coming in. Dropped 3 surprise names on us: Perez coming up, Slaughter coming up, and then McCarron. We had no idea those guys were going to be in this. So that was a really well done surprise. I mean, we have a good idea of what they're going to be running offensively, because for the most part, I mean, there's one team, I forget which one it was because I don't have the list in front of me, where it was just like, oh, those are 2 polar opposite quarterbacks. I have no idea what they're going to do, so that was interesting. But versatility is big in these leagues, right? Being able to do a lot of different things is very, very helpful. Especially, we've seen all these alt leagues, they've played 2 quarterbacks, throughout the season. So, beautiful. Okay.
There we go. I got you now. It's not on the XFL. You go to the Markcast on Twitter. We got it. So we have Arlington Renegades, Drew Plitt, Ball State, Kyle Slaughter, USFL Northern Colorado, DC Defenders, Eric Dungy. We would expect Derek King to be there. Houston Roughnecks, Caleb Ellaby, and Brandon Silvers. Love Brandon Silvers. Las Vegas Vipers, Jalen McClendon, Luis Perez, Orlando Guardians, Quentin Dormandy, DeAndre Francois, San Antonio Brahmas, Juan Pass, Anthony Russo, Seattle Sea Dragons, Ben DiNucci, Steven Montez, and AJ McCarron and Ryan Willis with the Battlehawks.
Mm-hmm.
Now we'll go through, but now that you've seen everything, it's all in front of you, we can process it. Yeah, the list needed to be sent out immediately after, but that's okay. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's it. We'll give them a pass on this one. They did just throw 3 surprise names on us. So, okay. So I guess we'll start with Arlington, because I think that was the first team was that the first? Yeah, it was the first team they rolled out. Plitt and Slaughter are both interesting, obviously, because we saw Slaughter this past year in the I almost said the spring league. It's the USFL, and he was very inconsistent, is a good way to put it. When that offense was clicking, they were great. When he was not, they were not great at all, and it was some of the worst football that was in that league. So I think what you're doing with him, obviously he stuck around with the Jaguars for, I think, the first 2 weeks of the season, got cut halfway through preseason. I don't think he made the first roster cuts. I think that's when they let him go. And then, and that's the other thing too. I'm sorry, this is my ADD kicking in where I'm like going down another rabbit hole here because I have to mention this. This is great in terms of what the XFL's done with the calendar as compared to the USFL. Their calendar sets these guys up so that they play a college football season, and then as soon as this season's over, they're jumping into mini camps. And that's the disadvantage that the USFL has when they're compared to the XFL right now, because mini camp is when you go in there, you work out with the rookies, you work out with a bunch of other guys, you have a bunch of tryouts going on. There's all kinds of action going on at that time of the year. And if you make the team off of mini camp and they sign you and you make a 90-man roster, you now have an entire summer to work through, learn your playbook, learn out the terminology. Whereas Sloter, for example, he's a great example of this, got thrown into the Jaguars halfway through training camp because that's when his season ended. So he was at a huge disadvantage to the rest of the quarterbacks on that team because he's 2 months behind on studying the playbook and everything else. So I think I love that. First off, the calendar is going to be so much better with the XFL because it's going to set these guys up to be more successful going up into the NFL. Okay, so sorry, that was that thought.
That's okay.
That's why
I will say I agree. I will say I agree with you. Not only for learning the offense, but also just physicality, right? We've just played 12 weeks of football. We're coming into the middle of training camp.
Yeah.
I think a lot of coaches looked at the USFL and thought these guys are in game shape. They're ready to go. We can sign them as camp bodies and then let them go. I don't want to say that every player was looked at that way, but I think a vast majority was like, let's bring in guys and then we, use them and lose them kind of and move on from there.
I think that was definitely a part. And, they're so far behind as compared to everybody else who's been there for 2 months already. And there's no way around it. That's the only thing that the XFL did, or not the XFL, the USFL, in my opinion, that does not help them with the NFL. They want to be a standalone product in the summer. That's great. You can do that. But we're seeing the results right now, with the guys that they just pulled into this just to play quarterback. We don't even know about the rest of the draft pool, which they said is 1,700 players deep right now. This is the USFL right now is figuring out, okay, well, we went the wrong direction with what we were trying to do and made some really questionable decisions.
Wrong direction in terms of
where you set your calendar up and what type of a product you want to be, right? The XFL, I talked about this right before the stream started, understands their role, right? And their role is very strictly this. We know that we're not going to compete with the NFL. And the only way that we're going to stay alive is if we can provide players opportunities at the NFL, right? That's what this is saying right now, okay, is this calendar fits better. The USFL they're in trouble. They are in trouble. And I thought they were in trouble coming into it. But the quarterback's not going back to that league speaks volumes right now. Just the guys that we just saw go here.
Well, I don't want to be, I am firmly called the USFL hater and I'm the XFL apologist and all that stuff, but looking at just the quarterbacks and then knowing potentially other position groups and everything else here coming once the contracts are up in December, I think it's going to be really, really eye-opening both ways. Maybe the XFL falls on its face. That could happen too. But they're certainly presenting more of a, you want to come play with us, whether it's, like you said, based on calendar or money, or we're playing in the cities, or you get to work with Hines Ward, or you get to do whatever. Like, there's just a lot more tangibles there. I know USFL announced the Memphis thing today. I don't think like having, okay, we got 2 teams in Memphis. I don't think that incentivizes someone like Kyle Sloter. Like, okay, well, let me go back and I can go play in the Liberty Bowl where I can go play on that. I don't think that's enough to draw some of the talent back.
No, it's not. And the calendar, I think, is one of the biggest things, right? Because when I would talking with some of the players when they were trying to make this decision back, I guess when the XFL was first announced, this is, halfway through the USFL season, at the end of the USFL season, sitting there going, So, which league? What are my options? Is it worth trying to get into the XFL? Is it worth sticking out the USFL? And I think my advice was very consistent, because I'm not part of either league. And so I'm just looking at it from the outside and going, these are all the positives. And when you see all the positives, when you line up a pros and cons sheet, it's overwhelmingly in favor of the XFL. And so it's not that, I hate the USFL. I don't hate all that. And I know that you're the same way. It's just being a realist looking at the situation going, the XFL has done a much better job catering their players to set them up to go up into the next level than much better job the USFL could have ever possibly done.
We have a question here, and then we'll go team by team here. Keep in mind, we do it might be too long. We'll see what we do, but we do have an XFL quarterback going to be calling in, one of the ones that was just assigned. We'll see if we can be on long enough for all that stuff. I'm going to put out one more thing, but we have a question here. Who has the best arm talent? And then I want to go team by team.
Ooh, that is a good one. So are we talking if we're talking strictly arm talent, so that's a bunch of different categories, right? Because it's being able to push the ball down the field, it's placement and different things like that. That's arm talent is like an entire category. If I'm looking at that right now, I'm probably going to go, oh man, that's a tough one. There's a bunch of them that are close. It's going to be probably McCarron, Francois up there. And at this point, I don't want to say Dungy, but he might be right there. If we're talking arm strength, so the strongest arm, the guy that can push the ball the farthest down the field, it's probably a toss-up between Jawan Pass and maybe McClendon. Jalen McClendon.
Who's your favorite quarterback that you see on here?
That I see on here personally, because I know him a little bit, it's Anthony Russo. And okay. I'm very excited for him. That's a great setup for him. In terms of talent and a guy that I would want to work with a lot, they're all so close. This is so even, and I love this. It's so difficult. I would go McCarron, and it's because he's been in a good system. He's done a bunch of different things. He's been around the NFL for a long time, and I feel like I could get him to consistently perform at the level that I want him at.
I just got a text. Maybe we're seeing how soon we can take our interview. So that would be tremendously exciting. Okay, he says, okay, awesome. We're trying to work that out. They had the interview, Doug Whaley talking. We're trying to grow the quarterbacks of the future, right? Which quarterback on here is just like that? I need to work with Jordan Palmer for 6 months and kind of get my life together here and figure it out.
Caleb Elby. is that guy. He on this list, right? And it's because he just came out of college a year too early. He's got talent. He's got a lot of it, and the offense that we talked about earlier, the offense that he played in was so limited in terms of how it translates over to the NFL. So we really just need to get Eleby in some sort of spread, even if it's got some West Coast and views, something that's more than RPO that allows him to develop his footwork, his drop back, allow him to read the field and not have one read plays, and he could potentially jump up.
Any surprises where you think this was a swing and a miss?
Well, I do this every year with the NFL draft too, and it's because people are always like, "Oh, well, who's the biggest miss?" One of this year, for example, was Cole Strange. Everybody was trashing Cole Strange getting picked in the first round by the Patriots, and I see what teams are thinking. And it's because you're looking at guys from a potential standpoint, and what they could potentially bring to your team. So I don't see any real big misses. The thing that doesn't make a lot of sense is, which team was it that went with polar opposite? The Vipers going with Luis Perez, who is a pocket kind of, throw the ball underneath, run, quick throws, a lot of tempo, and Jalen McClendon, he's got a bigger arm. He's a runner, and so I don't understand that. I don't understand what the thinking is. I don't understand how they're going to play an offense that both of them can perform in.
Well, I guess let's start there because I want to hit all these teams. I have a couple of people that are going to call in. We have the quarterback calling in. John's hanging out. We have good viewership still. If you guys have questions, let me know. But we have a little bit of stuff going on here. So I know it feels like it's a little sporadic, but it's what we do. It's the live streams. We do a more normal podcast every Friday. It's all edited and put all together. But this is kind of reacting live. Start with the Vipers. What do you make of that? In terms of what the hell they're going to do with these two polar opposites?
They have to have a plan, and it's maybe McClendon is going to be some sort of special package guy. That's the only thing I could potentially think, because McClendon's stats, when he was in college, when you compare at a bunch of the guys that, that are sitting here on this list right now, McClendon didn't play a lot in college, and he's a runner. And so maybe they have a plan with him where they're drafting him as a quarterback now, but they're going to use him kind of like the Saints like to use Taysom Hill. That's the only thing. That's the only sense I can make of it, which means the Vipers have an extra quarterback spot if that is the case.
I like that. I mean, if you're going to mess around with stuff, I wouldn't do it with the Saints. I would do it with the Vipers. I think that is, if we're going to experiment with some offensive things. I mean, I hate what the Saints are doing all the time just because it feels like they never really know what their plan is. But we had a question. Mike wants to, will the leftover quarterbacks not selected, they be eligible to be drafted during the next 2 days? So tomorrow's draft, which John and I are going to be live streaming, and I have a lot of other people, that'll be for a lot of the skill positions. There's open draft spots on Thursday. So that would be where other quarterbacks will be drafted. And then there's going to be the supplemental draft in January once all the other USFL contracts let up. So could see some more quarterbacks on Thursday. And then we could see a lot more quarterbacks in January. I was surprised that all the teams but DC had 2 today. I was expecting we would just kind of get 8 and then maybe a couple doubles over. Feels like, I've called the XFL not being prepared a lot. It feels like they were kind of prepared today, except for Derek King.
No, then I think King was the only thing here that, that backfired on him, right? Because he was literally in this draft pool until 2-3 days ago. Literally, it was 2 or 3 days ago. So it's kind of hard to replace that. But I think, they were prepared. They had these surprises lined up, and they kept it under wraps. That's impressive, right? These guys didn't show up at any camps. There was nothing crazy going on behind the scenes where, people were leaking this stuff. We had no idea that some of these guys were going to show up today, and they did. That was really well done by them.
Yeah, it really was like the Royal Rumble, where it's like, my God, that's Brandon Silver's music. What's going on? We have a question. Yeah, the Under Armour hats. We got to get some more of this merch out, guys. We got to. I will say, we've had 28 months, Danny and Dwayne, 28 months. We got to get past the trucker hats here on this. Stephen Air Montez, are you high on Montez here with the Dragons?
Development. If he can develop, he's got potential, but you got to get that. He's got a good arm. Yeah, he really does. He can push the ball down the field, and I remember that. And I liked him in that term. I just didn't think that he was when he was coming out. When I saw him at the Senior Bowl in 2020, I just thought he was nowhere near ready to play in the NFL, which turned out. He bounced around practice squads the last few years, and now he's here. But he's just got to develop, and that's going to be on the coaches. If he can do that, then he could be really good. I don't know if he's going to be able to get there enough.
That's the thing. You get some of these guys, it's a work in progress. I'll be curious, how much growth we see. We talk at USFL as well. We have reduced training camps, all that kind of stuff. These guys have been working with Palmer. You said you were high on that as a decision. No one else you would bring in but Jordan Palmer for that. Any of these guys you think would really benefit from kind of that knowledge? Yeah,
Montez is definitely one of them. Jawan Pass, Anthony Russo are both guys that would benefit from that kind of knowledge. Really, Francois too. Really, there's not many guys you can look at this. Drew Plitt is another great guy that would be perfect. That a lot of these guys really just need that type of coaching. And it's, kudos to Jordan for agreeing to do this. That's great, for him and for the guys that are going to be playing this league. If you look at the overall, spring league quarterback play over the last few years, the biggest thing that always hurts these leagues and makes it difficult for casual football fans to watch is the quarterback play. And so why not go out there, go get somebody like Jordan who can work with these guys and see if you can't elevate that play and then doing it early enough to where, you know, they have a full half of a year to work with him, which is great.
Yeah, the question here: the players locked in. What happens? Yeah, so like Derek King, these guys, the XFL is going to be doing the other supplemental draft in January. You're going to get a lot more names with that. The USFL contracts up 12/31. Yeah, these anyone drafted, and Max is reminding us in the chat, anyone drafted over the next 2 days, they don't have to sign into the XFL till December 26th. So it kind of gives you some time where. And I think at that point, the time you would give up on the practice squad is like equal to the time the XFL's pay. Whatever the math works out, they've tried to time it well so that the players can sign on or wait to try to get picked up and get somebody like Derek King. Like I'd rather go take a practice squad paycheck for the next 6 weeks and then I can go sign on to the XFL here in January than, you know, be a part of the event today and then just go, right? I mean, does that jive with your sense?
Yeah, no, I think so. And it's because think about how much a minimum salary is right now in the NFL. As of now, it's $800,000 a year, and it's paid over in game checks. So 23 installments, I think. So if you sit there for 5-6 weeks, you're going to make probably, you know, 6 figures. So that's totally worth doing. You know, you get that opportunity, and then you go get to work with other guys that are, you know, at that pro level. So it's worth it for that too. But yeah, I think I don't think that he'll stick around. I could be wrong. I think he got signed because they needed some help at their quarterback position with some of the injuries that they've had, and they picked him up to just have him around for a few weeks. And I think the plan is to let him go, but we'll see.
Thoughts here. We did the Vipers talking. Oh, Max had, that was actually the thing I wanted to say. Max had the Vipers definitely chose these quarterbacks because they have ties to the LA Wildcats. The Georgia Play personnel was the Wildcats DVP in 2020. They were both originally on that team. Luis Perez,
good point.
Perez was traded to the New York Guardians, and they had all that thought. I guess that makes sense. It cuts right. It just, like you said, does feel like we have polar opposites here, where you have a couple different competing mentalities there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And but I do wonder. I wonder if they do have plans to play McClendon at other positions, because that's the only thing I could think from a schematic. Because you don't want to design an offense with 2 different skill sets, right? Because if one of them goes down or one can't play or whatever, now you have to change everything that you're doing on that offensive side to cater to that. So that's the only thing I can think.
We had a comment that I guess Rod Woodson was not at the event. I didn't notice that when they were praying everyone out. He's going to be at the town hall tonight. Really curious if we get the Vegas stadium news out of that, just because I don't know what you do for a town hall in Vegas when you don't have a stadium announced. And like, that's going to be the only thing people are asking. But I guess people in the chat were saying like, oh, it's interesting. Rod Woodson wasn't. Are you concerned that we're, 2.5 months from kickoff and Vegas doesn't have a stadium?
No, I'll go get it figured out. Even if, I know that UNLV plays at the Raider Stadium, and I guess that there's some sort of thing with that. But you have to also remember that the XFL right now is good for the NFL, not just because they're developing talent, but because they have that agreement now where they're testing new rules. They can work with. They're going to be, developing referees as well, which referees are always the biggest thing right now in the NFL, right? Where we're always complaining, like we can talk about that missed face mask call there at the end on that fumble last night that helped Washington beat Philadelphia, but we could talk about that kind of stuff. So it's beneficial for the Raiders to let them play in that stadium. I think they're going to get it figured out.
Mizark, DC has one. Derek King was going to be their second. He got signed to the Panthers practice squad, so we're going to work through that. We had a question here. We're going through the team breakdowns. Juwan Pass, Anthony Russo, completely different styles. They're with the Brahmas. Thoughts on that? We've talked Vipers, we've talked a little Renegades. Thoughts on the Brahmas quarterbacks?
Yeah, in terms of style, yeah, they're different. But in terms of what they have in their skill set, Juwan can run, Anthony can't. That's the main difference between the two of them. But they both can push the ball down the field. They're both vertical guys. That looks like that's going to be an old-time Pittsburgh Steelers style offense.
Looks like we're getting a connection set up here for our breaking news guest that's going to be joining us, one of the assigned XFL quarterbacks. Really excited they're getting everything set up there. Any other thoughts on the Brahmas while we get this interview here? I see they're connected.
No, I think that's pretty much. I'm just excited to see what Hines Ward does, and I just think that that has set up their what's the word I'm looking for? I think it has it set up for that offense. It's going to be an old time Steelers offense. It's going to be fun to do.
Yeah, they're Texas. So we're getting it going. Let's talk about the Arlington Renegades while we're here for this. Any other thoughts? We talked to Kyle Sloter coming out of USFL. Talked to Drew Plitt. Any other thoughts on that with Bob Stoops? They're really excited for that.
Yeah, no, it's probably going to be an air raid type offense, right? And both of those guys can fit that. It's a lot of quick throws. Plitt's really got a really nice release that I always liked when he was at Ball State. And I think that they'll be a good fit for that offense.
Yeah, curious, and I'll have to go on. We checked Twitter later for the USFL. Kyle Sloter was kind of like one of the gods of the USFL, one of the guys that people really liked, and with the Jaguars and all that stuff. Interesting to see. Curious where any of the other stuff comes out from that. Any other thoughts on Drew Plitt here before we move on to the other teams?
No, not at the moment. I know that he went to the CGS last year. He did the College Gridiron Showcase, which is a really nice event that they do down in San Antonio or Fort Worth, I guess, every year. That the NFL has really liked it. They don't play an all-star game. It's a OTA style event, and they get a lot of really good player access. So I know that he went there. There's some pretty good coaches that help out there as well. But yeah, he's, again, one of these guys that just needs more reps, needs to keep developing, and has a really good shot at moving up to the next level.
What do we've had all these showcases, and we went to Hawaii, we went to HBCU, all these different things. Like, what do you make of the time, them trying to find all these guys, working with that, all the scouting that's gone into the XFL?
Yeah, it's worked, because especially when you talk about the HBCUs, because they did have a specific event for HBCU alumni. And, we've got several of them here. We've got Jawan Pass, who just came out, right? He's a very young kid. He's ready to go. I know there's another one on here. I'm trying to find him. Francois, I think Hampton's an HBCU. So obviously, dang it. I can't think of who it was. It's obviously worked, right? I think that we're going to see a whole lot more. There's a lot of talent at the HBCU level that they don't have the skill sets consistently across those leagues that let us look at the tape and just automatically project them up. This is a good step up for them in competition level, and it's going to help them a lot more with the more opportunities in the future.
No, Aquil Glass, Felix Harper. Any thought that neither of them? This isn't the only quarterbacks. But any thought today that they didn't show up?
No, I think Glass is. I scouted him a lot last year as well out of Alabama A&M. He's a very raw project, and the same thing with Harper. Harper's got a good arm. I don't think Glass's arm is kind of middling at best, but his accuracy was inconsistent. So when you look at this list, it's very fair. I think these are probably the best guys out of that group.
If you can't tell, I'm tap dancing here. We have our guests standing. I see them connecting the camera. We're almost there. We'll get a thumbs up from them if you guys. We got one of the quarterbacks calling in here. But in the meantime, Francois, the Glacier Boys. Did you watch any of the FCF? And then it looks like we're ready to go. Any thoughts on Francois with the Glacier Boys?
I did. I watched a little bit of it. It was a bad time, because I think I was watching at that point a lot of USFL. So it just wasn't on at an appropriate time for me to watch it extensively. But no, Francois, he's an interesting guy. I like him. He's, like I said, we talked before, about almost an hour ago now on the broadcast. He's got the tools. He just has to answer the questions off the field. And I think that once he gets those questions answered, he'll probably be in the league.
All right, I think we're ready. Guest, if you hear us, can you give us a thumbs up? I think we're all set here. We got a thumbs up. And, by God, that's Drew Plitt's music. By God. How are you doing, sir? Congratulations on your signing.
Thank you very much. No, I'm super excited. Happy to be out here in Vegas with the whole draft show and everything. So happy to be here and happy to be part of the league.
You're here with the Arlington Renegades, Bob Stoops, everything else of that. How was the event for you?
It's awesome, man. I'm super excited. Like I said, to be playing football again. It's been nice to get a little free time, but I'm ready to get back out on the field, start playing, and throwing the ball around.
John, do you have any questions for Drew?
Yeah, Drew. So what is the biggest thing you've been working on, since, obviously the CGS, and then I think you were around with the practice squad for a little bit as well. What's the biggest thing you've been working on to improve?
Yeah, I was with the Bengals, and I think the great thing that came out of that is my confidence. I knew I could play at this level. I know that I can play at the NFL level. So I never really lacked in that sense, but coming out of that, it just reached a new height. And going into, the XFL is going and competing and showing teams, any kind of downside that I have, whether it's my arm strength or throwing a deep ball, things like that, that I can do it and I can play at the NFL level and make those type of big throws.
You're going to be borrowing any – oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, John. You're the guest. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, are you going to be borrowing any, what's the word, fashion advice or taking any fashion advice from old Joe Burrow up there?
I don't know about that. I'll probably reach out to him, see if he's got any suggestions, but I'm actually a fashion guy myself, so I'm excited to, get back out there and show what I've got to put on.
Yeah, Drew, you're looking good. I'm just curious, how did all this come about? Like, how did you wind up standing on the stage at UFC Apex here in mid-November?
Yeah. So I got cut by the Bengals about second week preseason games after that, and they brought me in when Joe was hurt, and they were straight up with me about the whole situation. So I went into every opportunity that I had with the goal to change their mind, and I didn't, unfortunately, but I got a lot out of it and was super blessed to have that opportunity and super excited to be the hometown guy that from Cincinnati and playing for Cincinnati, which was an awesome experience. And when I came back home, about a week or two later, player personnel director Rick Mueller gave me a call, have some connections with him at Ball State. He knew my head coach and our ops guy at Ball State, and so gave me a call and told me what was going on, and it's just kind of kept rolling from there. And so super excited to be here, like I said, and be a part of this group.
You're getting compliments on your blazer. They said pure fire on that. John, question from you, and then I have another one here I'll pop up.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I remember about when I watched you was that you were fairly accurate, right, at the MAC level. Is there something that with your specifically your mechanics, your footwork, anything specific like that you think helps you stand out amongst these other quarterbacks?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's my feet. I played in a wing T offense in high school, so to get noticed, I had to be good when I was throwing routes on there and doing stuff like that. So that really came from using my feet. Obviously I had an arm, but be able to show that I was able to do normal dropbacks and stuff like that I didn't do in high school. And I just carried over into college and continued to, build upon that and become more accurate. I think with how quick my feet are, I can make decisions a little bit quicker and get the ball out. I'm faster than most guys can. And so I'm super excited, to be able to showcase that out at the XFL level and hopefully get another shot in the NFL.
Talk about the importance that we always ask, but we cover, as I break my microphone, we cover all the spring leagues and USFL, XFL, like the importance of having these other alternative venues for you guys to go, get game tape, get reps, all that stuff. Talk about it and how the XFL fits into that. No,
this is awesome. For me, coming from a small school, Ball State, playing the MAC, obviously it's D1, but it's not it's not the Power 5. So there's always questions and doubts, can somebody translate from that level to the NFL? So being able to go out in these leagues and play as well as I can and dominate or do whatever play the best quarterback position I could be is really how this, kind of a league, whether it's this, the spring league, the USFL, whatever it is, but these help huge with just film and being able to showcase that we can play at the professional level.
What have you been able to sorry.
Let me just real quick follow. What in terms of XFL versus USFL, was there any debate there of choosing one versus the other?
I want to get back out on the field as soon as possible. I felt like the XFL had a little bit better structure and working with the NFL and stuff like that. And there's no knock on either one of them. I think it's great football either way, and more opportunities for guys like me and positions like me to be able to play. And I think it's great for football in general.
John, go for it.
What has it been like working with Jordan Palmer this offseason, and what have you been able to learn from him?
Yeah, he looks at the quarterback position a lot differently than most other quarterback coaches do. It's not just throwing mechanics, where your arm slot is, stuff like that. It's more using the ground to generate force, and from that, your arm slot, your mechanics will be better because, you're using more force and less arm strength So naturally, you're going to be able to throw the ball a little bit farther, throw it a little bit harder. And it's really interesting. We looked at it from a kinesiology basis, being a quarterback, you never see the position that way, and that's the first time I've heard about it. So it's been awesome and great.
Just curious, we're getting here ramping up for kickoff. You're finally here, have the event. We've got everyone there. Danny's there, all the coaches. Talk about just the feeling in the room and kind of what has been the vibe with everyone that you've been working with so far.
Yeah, I've been around a lot of the quarterbacks, and everybody's really excited to be, playing, being in this league. There's a lot of positive energy around it, and a lot of us get along really well. So, a lot of us will be staying in Arlington area, so kind of having that connection and I'm excited to work with Kyle Silver. I know he's a little bit older than me and been around a little bit more, so to pick up some things from him, and we'll be competing. But we're gonna have a great relationship and get together and work hard.
John, anything else?
Oh, congrats, man! I mean,
thank you.
We're excited. It was cool to see you just pop up on the stage as the first guy walking up there. Yeah. That was awesome. It must have been a surprise for you too, right?
Yeah, they told me I was going first. I was like, well, good thing I dressed nice today.
Well, Drew, I really appreciate it. I appreciate XFL, everyone setting this up, and I'm sure you got a lot of other stuff coming up here, but thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk on the show today, and we're just really excited to support all you guys coming up here in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Awesome. We're going to thank Drew. Appreciate it. And John, that was good. What do you think? A real life XFL quarterback calling into the show.
No, I hadn't talked with him yet. So that was very nice to kind of get a little bit of a feel for him. I like his attitude, his mentality. He's got a lot of good stuff going for him.
So we have a call in here. We'll talk through here a little bit. We'll see how long we go. Decent, viewership still holding strong, at least for the time being. We have Pat Ruffino, one of the guys, XFL News. Pat's calling in here. Pat, thoughts of what have you made of everything going on?
So the biggest surprise to me was the AJ McCarron read. I'm sure you've seen in our groups. I've been big into having these guys kind of have a little bit more experience, like not that Landry Jones or Matt McGloin or Cardale Jones were world beaters by any means, but I think having that name brand notoriety kind of perks the casual viewer up. So like we talked about earlier on the show, now you got a bunch of people from Alabama who are going to care about the Battlehawks just because of AJ McCarron. So that's a great first step. Couple of guys that I'm a little bit surprised that didn't get mentioned was Jarrett Guantanamo, or I don't know if I'm saying his name right.
Guarantano. Yeah, I remember him at Tennessee. We hated him.
Yeah, he been back and forth with the Cardinals this year, and then you kind of bring in Cole McDonald, Davis Cheek, but figured that they might sneak in there with the with any of these teams with De'Ara King out. But overall, fresh blood, which is good. Like to see Perez come back, at least play somewhere, because I do think he is a talented enough professional quarterback. But overall, pretty excited with a couple of these names.
Pat, I've been on here since whenever you've been more probably in the group chat. We have all of our writers. Everyone go crazy there. General reaction to everything happening. What's everyone been saying?
I mean, everyone's, going back and forth, talking in between everything going on. Pretty excited with obviously just the pieces of the puzzle kind of coming together with everything right now. We're starting to get attached. We're having fans, and that's the biggest thing.
Pat, you're covering the Battlehawks. You just posted your article I shared, talking with Beck over at the town hall. What do you make of their quarterback signings, especially with Willis, who we've seen bounce around before too?
Hey, sorry about that. So I actually had the privilege of talking with Coach Beck and kind of name dropped Ryan Willis and, they were trying to keep that really hush-hush. I'm big on Ryan Willis. I'm excited to see him in the Dome, kind of, bringing it back to that early 2000s of the greatest show on turf. He had amazing success in the spring league with Hal Mummy, airing it out with that air raid offense. They obviously got two good QBs. AJ McCarron has had success in the NFL with everything going, with his limited time playing for the Bengals in that playoff run. I think it was 2015. And then now you bring in Willis, who was a champion MVP for the Spring League, which a lot of those guys went to the USFL. So you're seeing quality starters just not only in the XFL, the USFL, just kind of spread all over these two leagues. So there's plenty of good football players out there. And I think the XFL definitely hit some home runs on a couple of them.
Biggest surprise for you that you saw?
Everything makes sense. I would go DiNucci because he was still working out for NFL teams. I would say it would be up between DiNucci and Steven Montez, as we saw with King getting signed recently. There is still an opportunity for these guys to make a little bit of money. If King stays the whole season, he'll come into about $96,000, which may be more than what he makes at the XFL right now. I guess it's kind of harboring as much opportunity for these guys as well. Brandon Silvers was a nice name to see back as well. A lot of people don't know this, but I do keep track on all the stats of TSL 2021, USFL, AAF, UFL, and XFL 1.0 and 2.0. And Silvers is actually a top 5 statistical quarterback. Him and Perez. So he's got 19 career touchdowns, a little bit over 2,000 yards, which is second to, Mr. Alt League himself, Luis Perez.
Pat does the Lord's work in kind of keeping all these stats. John, do you have a question for Pat? I gotta follow up.
No, I think the biggest thing I've got for Pat is because I wasn't tracking Jalen McClendon too much, and I was wondering if you had anything on him.
So I did an article about him recently. It should be coming out on the Markcast, but he's very limited as far as his passing, his actual passing statistics and opportunity. I was kind of surprised to see his name. He was the third string guy, but after Josh Johnson and Chad Kanoff with the LA Wildcats in 2020, has had some cups of tea with the, I don't know if they were the Redskins or the football team in 2019, the Washington franchise. Mm-hmm. And I think he was with the Ravens for about 45 minutes. Him and I probably spent the same amount of time in the Ravens facility in our pro careers. And I'm a little, kind of intrigued by him. I definitely think bringing Luis Perez as air quote QB1 for the Vipers kind of solidifies that, because I think McClendon only has less than 200 passing attempts, and that's me being extremely gracious. The thing when I think about McClendon is his skill set lines up a little bit closer to Josh Johnson. So when Johnson didn't play that first game, they went with Kanoff. Kind of tells you something there. And I think McClendon did appear. I think he threw like 4 passes in the XFL, ran a couple times, but he wasn't that, gadget kind of used like Quentin Flowers was years ago. So, he's kind of the wild card in all this. If he goes out and lights it up, I'm not going to be surprised. If he goes out and is rocking a 20% completion percentage, I'm not going to be surprised.
Right.
A couple of these guys, you kind of get the gauge of like the 1.5, the 1 touchdown interception ratio, that 59 to 65% completion percentage. But a lot of, like McClendon is kind of a wild card. Pass, I think will be pretty consistent as well as far as the progression from college to the XFL. But there's a couple guys that like Montez, I'm curious to see, because at one point they wanted to use him in Washington when Alex Smith got hurt as the kind of Taysom Hill back because of his athletic ability.
I see here we had a comment about McLeod Bethel Thompson. Now I think McLeod Bethel Thompson should focus on winning the Grey Cup next weekend and just ride out his life in the CFL. We have another call in. I've also, if you want to call into the show before we get out of here today, remember we'll be on all day tomorrow. Today is obviously going to be a little bit, abbreviated, but we have Arlington with the fan podcast. We'll bring him on here. And then if anyone else wants to call in today, fan reactions, and I don't know how long Pat wants to be on the phone or whatever, if you need to drop off, but Arlington, let's unmute you. And I think you have to unmute yourself here, Arlington. How are you doing, sir?
Gracious enough to be a part of the Markcast. What's going on, guys?
All right, good. Another St. Louis guy here. What did you biggest surprise for you? We've been on here. What are the Twitter saying?
I think the AJ McCarron thing was probably a big surprise for St. Louis. Now, him being in the XFL is probably not a surprise, but the selection of him going to St. Louis is pretty interesting all by itself. I think Houston's selections were pretty interesting too. Like, if you could throw the graphic on really quick.
I will. Yes, there we go.
Because I wanted to make sure I got the correct name on it. The LB and Silvers. Silvers was the one that I was kind of shocked with, that, you know, getting over in Houston. And I'm like, I'm going to get a chance to see him a bit while I'm down here in Texas. I'm not in St. Louis anymore. So basically what I'm going to be doing is going over to U of H and seeing Silvers over there. I was really surprised. There was another person I just couldn't think of that had Houston ties that I thought would have been the Jawan Pass. Prairie View A&M is in Houston, Texas, or just a little bit outside of Houston. So I thought that's where they were going to go at that moment. But him being in San Antonio is actually going to be pretty good for Hines Ward. Interesting to see how they utilize him, if they utilize him in his offense. So those, and DC Defenders only getting one quarterback. That was kind of surprising to me too. That was I was expecting another name to come along with it, but the names that have been said on the list didn't get any love, like Carson Strong, none of that.
Well, you know, and that was weird with the Derek King thing and them coming back later. I guess they just want to leave that spot open. Pat, thoughts on Brandon Silvers and the Houston thing? You know, AJ Smith is there and they have all those ties, and him, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people pegged Silvers to Houston.
I think you find guys like Silvers, Perez. I wouldn't put Slaughter in that group yet, but these guys in baseball, we use the term 4A, is the guys who aren't quite ready for the major leagues, but are way too good for AAA. And I think guys like that are essential to building this league, because they're going to put out a high quality product, and they're going to give looks to these other receivers and running backs, and even these defenses, as bringing high quality play to the XFL that can help out other guys to the NFL. Now, I don't think Brandon Silvers will ever take an NFL snap, and that's not a big deal, because he could put together a pretty decent career being a part of the XFL. Now, when you bring out these spread happy disciples of the air raid guys like AJ Smith, they're only going to put a guy like Brandon Silvers in a position to succeed. So, I mean, he put up decent numbers, you know, kind of thrown out there with the dysfunction of the AAF Express. He really lit it up in the spring league, was one of the better passers of the spring league, probably number 2 to Ryan Willis. So this guy is in 100% a good position to succeed and extend his professional career as a pro QB. So just because he's not going to the NFL doesn't mean he's just a guy off the street. By no means. Brandon Silvers has the potential to be a top 4 QB in this league.
John, any thoughts on that?
No, I wasn't tracking those stats, so Pat's really on top of all that. Like, I had no idea that Silvers had produced that much. So, you know, I will definitely give kudos to you, Pat. That's awesome.
Thanks, bud.
Arlington, thoughts for you? Any quarterbacks? Like, you know, we talked about the Derek King. Not seen anyone else that you expected? Any surprises? You know, names from the past, USFL guys jumping over.
I mean, seeing Kyle Slaughter is over there with the Arlington Renegades, which is the team that I now own, if you haven't realized it just yet. But that has been a big surprise to me, because it's an indicator, I think, in a way, and I think I heard John say it a little bit a while ago on the show, that this makes little trouble for the USFL, where if you're getting guys from the USFL to come slot over in the XFL now, I mean, that's troublemaking. And then you got Brian Scott. His name is being in the draft pool as well. So what you're looking at this moment is, how long the USFL going to be able to stand? That's just going to be an interesting thing for that.
I keep trying to here, let me get this out. I keep trying to like reformat my list so we can show them. We have another call in here, Max. I'm gonna need you to get your camera on there. But I'll be curious what the USFL people make of all this, just because I was really surprised that there was that many people that kind of jumped ship on that today. John, I know we touched on that earlier. Like, I mean, obviously there's always going to be talent out there, but is the level of talent replacing the outgoing? Is that enough?
I mean, if you look at last year, I'm going to use Brian Scott as an example because I think it was pretty clear after the first 3 weeks that Brian Scott was the runaway MVP of the USFL. The reason he wasn't able to finish out the season was because of offensive linemen. That's the biggest problem the USFL is going to have in bringing quarterbacks into the league is if the XFL continues on this route, where they're able to basically pull anybody they want out of the USFL. They could pull the entire league over if they want. There's not going to be enough offensive linemen to protect these guys. It's going to be a feast fest for the defense. And I think that's the biggest, thing that they need to be freaking out about right now, because that's dangerous. Because quarterbacks are going to look at that and go, well, if I don't have anybody to protect me, I can have, grade A receivers to throw the ball to, but if I do not have the time to get it to them because I'm getting sacked 10 times a game, people are not going to want to play in that league. And I think that's the biggest thing, that they need to be scared or they need to be concerned about. They need to start figuring out a plan for. I'm not sure if there's a plan to fix that.
This is truly the Motley Crew here. We have Pat, we have Arlington. Now we're bringing Max on, listener Max. That Max has class here in a little bit. So he says he's going to be brief. Max, what is happening in the world? What is happening with the XFL? What do you think?
Okay, so first off, credit to Mike Mitchell for getting every single one of the reports about the QB assignments right among the guys who were at the first Palmer camp. All those were correct. So shout out to him. Second off, I think the one thing I'm most upset about is the guys that were at the Palmer camp aren't signed yet. That were the ones that everyone was most excited. Everyone wants to see Carson Strong in the XFL. I don't know about everyone, but a lot of people want to see Cole McDonald in the XFL. A lot of people want to see Khalil Tate. Even some people want to see Jarrett Garantano, despite everything that happened at Tennessee. And yet, we have none of them. And on top of that, the other guys we know the XFL is chasing, like Glass, like Harper, like Kelly, Cole Kelly. All those guys aren't in yet. And there's reason to believe they might not come in because of whatever demands they have or whatever. And those are all the young talents we're looking forward to. So I hope that changes, or whoever else they have wins can really bring it up to where I can be like more than just like, all right, this is fine, to where I can be like excited like I was before, because there's just so much QB talent available right now.
Just a little note real fast on Carson Strong specifically is his biggest issue right now is his medicals at the combine this past year were terrible. And so I think with him, there's a little bit of a scare where you don't want to put him on the field and you don't want him to mess that up even more. And I think that's probably why he's not signed yet. They're still trying to figure all that stuff out. They were very bad. I heard from multiple people, they were very bad medicals, like very like life-threatening type stuff.
What do you mean in terms of?
So one of the biggest things with the combine is the medicals, is when they do a medical examination and they basically get a good assessment of what you're, how dangerous is it for you to play. And so he had some issues, I believe, with his knees and maybe his ankle while he was at Nevada. And that it's not held up well post, surgery and everything else like that. He's at a very high risk if he takes the field to re-injure himself very, very badly.
Gotcha. Anyone, A-Train, do you have a reaction to that?
He mentioned about Akil Glass and Felix Harper. Of course, Harper had a chance to get some time with the Cleveland Browns. Of course, Akil Glass getting some time with the Tampa Bay Bucks. But one name, I know it's out there, but they do not look at him at all. And his name is David Pendell. And he was a quarterback over in UConn. Like, he's a guy, a mobile quarterback that guy could really potentially light up a scoreboard if you put him in the right situation, in the right system. And it's just funny to me that he didn't even get any eyeballs. If he did, nobody said anything. And I've been rooting for him to get a shot at one of these leagues, even if it wasn't USFL. I was really trying to get him for the XFL. And of course, Max mentioned Akil Glass, which is a St. Louis guy. And as funny as this may seem, went to the same high school. I went to the same high school and the same college as Akil Glass. He went there. So that's kind of interesting enough. And he has St. Louis ties, which would have been perfect for the Battlehawks. But again, like John stated, like was stated on here, the demands may not be what he wants at this point. You know, he's probably looking for something a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit better. So it would have been nice to see, but again, maybe demands weren't there. But those are guys I would have loved to see get selected. But again, it's all about what those guys want.
I'll get Pat's thoughts on Pindell as well. Max, anything else? Because I know you're on a shortened time frame. Anything else you want to make sure we get in from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the USFL guys. So Mike Mitchell mentioned last night on a News Hub stream, he mentioned that about the XFL wanted about 40 to 50 guys who are currently under contract with the USFL until December 31st. So among those, you would expect most of those are QBs and offensive linemen because the USFL actually did get a pretty good crop of offensive line guys in their league just off the bat. So yeah, I would expect I would be worried too if I.
No, I think.
Yeah, we might have lost you there.
Might have lost him, Mac.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Max, one more time, and you might be worried if, and then we'll cut you off here. Now, all right.
It's not working.
That's okay, guys. Yeah, any other surprised with that? Arlington react to that, and I want to get Pat's thoughts on Pindell.
Those USFL guys, like we stated, and John had stated it too. That is a fear of the USFL, is having the factors go over to now wanting to play with The Rock, and I do that as my little personal joke. Is I'd rather play for The Rock than playing over in the USFL, which already has had a season under their belt. But now you're looking at it as, okay, the XFL is now here. I want to play for them. There have been players that I have spoken with, Reed, that had said, even when the USFL dropped, I'd rather play for the XFL. Like, they literally said this. Like, they were not playing around. I'm waiting for the XFL to come. So that's what their focus was. That's what they wanted to be a part of. I guess they didn't like whatever the USFL was bringing to them. That's what they wanted to do. So I just find that interesting that they're waiting instead of getting an opportunity to play in another league.
Yeah, no, it makes sense too, because look at the scandals that happened in the USFL this past year, right? I call them scandals in air quotes, but like, Devonta Smith, was it? No, it's not Devonta. The running back that got cut over pizza. You know what I'm saying? Because he was rude with a hotel person, and then they put that up on their hour-long show before the game, and like they were doing a great thing, and it backfired because everybody was like, "What are you talking about?" I don't know a lot about that story in specific, but that was just one of the examples where it's just like, are they taking care of the players? Is this actually legit? Are they just being overboard with a lot of this different stuff? And I think that was one of the mistakes that they made, right? And Brian Woods, credit to him. He's made these leagues happen, with the Spring League and now the USFL. But he just has that stigma about him that he carries with him pretty much everywhere he goes, where it's still kind of, people aren't too sure. They don't trust him too much. Brian's my boy, but Brian is that is a interesting gentleman there. Brian's my boy, but everyone will know famously on here, he had promised us a Spring League Jousters jerseys, which I ended up buying third party here after the fact. But he goes, I'm going to mail you a package. It had been like 2 years, and then they show up and it's like a t-shirt. So I'm like, Brian,
you're doing the effort, right? Like you go through the effort to do this, but it's always like 70%. It's never, but it's like having training camp. Like we're in a 3-week training. It's like have 5-week training camp. Have like it's always like how we just want to get just enough under that. Pat, thoughts on that? And I do want to hit Pindell just before I forget about it. But Pat, any thoughts about the Brian Woods of it all in the USFL? If Pat's still there,
I'm still here. I'm a little bit. I like Brian Woods. I don't know the guy. Never talked to the guy. I do have a nickname for his brother that has been used. That could be used as a slur towards Italian Americans. I think that's kind of where I hit reservations. Family, old Frito over there. But I'm a big fan of the USL because I'm a big fan of football, and I think because of the last 2 leagues that we have seen, that we'll just figure it out. We'll figure it out because sometimes in business, as someone who runs a business, that's a lot of what we do is, hey, we're going to figure this out and then we're going to tweak it as well. Now with them moving to the additional hubs and getting these players and coaches into the city, that's kind of a big thing for me as far as making the league a little bit more than just a hub league. And obviously with today, the Showboats going back to Memphis, a big move there. When I had a chance to talk to Coach Beck, both behind the scenes and when he did his event at Bally's, he was making it very clear that at least for the St. Louis franchise, that they will be a part of the St. Louis community. And I wrote an article about that on News Hub about how big that is. And that's really what's going to bring not just the Battlehawks, but any of these leagues and any of these teams to the next level. St. Louis is kind of an easy thing because they've been burned by Kroenke, everything going on. And even Beck's talked about bringing, Bolger and Steven Jackson back because they are, St. Louis football guys. One of the biggest things about their thing that they had at Ballpark Village was that one gentleman saying, I could bring my kid now to a football game. So if the USFL can tap into that, especially with even in Michigan where the Lions have given you nothing to cheer about over the last couple of years with like the Panthers and, Jeff Fisher going out doing all his stuff, that's going to take this league and bring it on par to where it needs to go because the football players will come, especially with the linemen. A lot of these quarterbacks now who didn't get called today are looking at this list and they're making that assessment. Am I better than Ryan Willis? Am I better than AJ McCarron? And even if they are they going to get that fair shot going into camp as QB3? Or would I rather go to the USFL where they're like, I played against Case Cookus in college and I was way better than him. I can take his job, no problem. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side with a lot of this stuff. A guy like Pindell coming from Fan Control Football, I believe he played in one of the European leagues.
Yep.
He might be saying that right now. I'm a little bit weird about the Fan Control Football game just because it's not because of the gimmick and the possible NFT nonsense they got going on, which not giving financial advice by any means. But is Pindell looking at that list right now saying, am I going to have a fair shot to go against Ryan Willis and AJ McCarron when, I played at UConn, put up decent numbers at UConn, was a pretty good player in the Arena League, but am I going to have that ability to actually get to showcase my skill? Because if I'm Coach Beck, I'm going with Willis day one. It's his job to lose, and I'm sure other coaches have that same mentality. I wouldn't be surprised if Perez is QB1 just going into Vipers camp because Jalen McClendon has had showcases and opportunities with other teams and leagues, and Perez is a proven commodity. So that's where I think the USFL could actually kind of win in this and find some more diamonds in the rough because you are going to be against the 8-ball just based off the fact that football in the XFL is February to April. Okay, I got some nicks and bruises, and now I'm ready to go for post-draft signings. So when all these teams are filling in their 90-man rosters, and you go out to that rookie camp, just to throw to these undrafted free agents trying out, now that those XFL quarterbacks do have a little bit of an advantage now on that front. No,
Sorry. Cindy's just learning that the Tampa Bay Bandits have gone away. Tampa Bay Bandits, RIP Bandits, is going to be the Memphis Showboats here coming up. I want to I'm going to pull back up the list. Thoughts, and let's get Arlington's comments. Quarterback battles, Pat's talking, where we're, Perez day one, Willis, whatever. Thoughts on who do you see as the most exciting quarterback battle? And I can't show the Battle Hawks; it won't fit. But AJ McCarron.
But granted, I know who the Battle Hawks are going to have, so I'm grateful for that. I think I know it's going to sound crazy, and I know Patrick said that Ryan Willis is going to be the guy, but I would not be surprised if there's a battle in St. Louis for that QB1 spot. I know AJ McCarron has had some NFL experience, but this is a time where a lot of people are looking him to be a mentor maybe to Ryan Willis, but maybe he wants a shot at showcasing that he still got something left. And maybe this is his final opportunity where he can do that. And that would be very interesting to me. Another one would be I'd be interested to see what the Guardians are going to do with Dormady and Francois, because that you're looking at a Florida State guy, and you're looking at Dormady that had some success over at Central Michigan. You want to see what those two could do in Orlando. And Terrell Buckley is going to have to figure this one out, because even though he's defensive minded, he's going to need a quarterback to run his squad. And this ain't Matt McGloin and Luis Perez back in 2020, right? So this is going to be something a bit more fresh and not older. And don't get me wrong, with the Vipers and Luis Perez is a football legend, but Rob Woodson may be looking at Jalen McClendon. Just maybe. I'm not saying he is. I'm just really thinking that he's going to want some excitement right away. And if McClendon shows up in camp and does a great job, Perez can be a backup. And I don't think Perez will have a problem with that either, because then, as he's done in the past, when they looked at him as a QB2, he's wind up becoming a QB1 because of the non-success of his successor or his predecessor. Mm-hmm. So you got some interesting battles in Vegas, Orlando, and St. Louis in this case. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to it all. I can't wait to see these other quarterbacks that's going to be getting into the with these teams, because I got to see what DC is going to do. One is not going to cut it. You're going to need another guy to help them out like tremendously. That's not.
Well, they're going to be running 53-man rosters in this league, right?
Close to it, 52, I think.
Yeah, it's like 50. Yeah, it's right around there.
Okay, so 52. So we still have all these quarterbacks that can get drafted in the open rounds tomorrow. And so I think everybody's going to be...
They'll be drafted Thursday, I believe.
Thursday.
I think tomorrow is just a skill position.
Okay, so yeah, the open round's on Thursday.
45. 45
is what they're doing. Okay.
Well, no.
45 with seven practice squad members, right?
So Newsroom says 45. This is July. I think Mitchell has it at 50. Let's call it 50. I would trust that 50.
Well, you have room for a number 3 guy. That's going to be a developed guy that you're going to kind of sit back. He's just going to kind of run scout team and different stuff like that. You're going to get a number 3 guy. So I think we're going to see some of those guys come off the board on Thursday as well. For all these teams, I think everybody's going to go after somebody. So the quarterbacks are definitely not done. And, like they mentioned a bunch of guys that are really interesting, with Cole McDonald and Cole Kelly. Those are all guys that, they're developmental right now, but they can be starters potentially, or competing in some of these battles, if they have a good camp too.
I did want to get your thoughts, John. Obviously we expected Derek King here to be with DC. That's the one that's up. But we've talked a lot, like, what can we expect with all these different offenses, seeing the quarterbacks? I mean, a little tougher there because we know who the second one would be. Like, what do you make of DC and what they're putting together there?
They definitely want an athletic guy in the back there. So in the quarterback position, so they want to be able to move the ball around. They want to be able to move the pocket. That's what Dungy does really well. That's what King was going to do really well. Especially King, you have to do that because he's just too small at times, right? He's literally maybe 5'10", standing on his tippy toes. And so, you have to get him outside of the pocket. You have to get him into some designed rollouts and different things. If he's going to end up playing the quarterback position, which I'm pretty sure that was the plan. So Dungy is the same sort of way. Dungy's bigger. I think he's about 6'3", if I'm remembering correctly, 220, 215, something like that. But he's much more effective getting outside of the pocket. So that fits what you want to do. So I think that they're going to probably go with some power runners. They're going to try to you're going to go a lot of, 22 personnel, 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, basically. And they're going to load up the box and try to get these guys onto some designed bootlegs.
Arlington, any thoughts on DC?
If that's the case, then I'm really, really interested in seeing how all of this transpires, especially with the rules and things. And, you being at the town hall, Reed in Seattle, and Hazlitt was saying that majority of the rules are going to be the same. So you're going to want to see how that gameplay is going to be implemented in this iteration of the XFL. So got to see how well those quarterbacks are just being utilized. And I think that's my biggest key for DC, for any team, as a matter of fact, to see what kind of offense are you going to make that's going to be successful in this league. I got a quick question for you guys on the panel. Do you believe that the XFL can create its own stars?
Curious, John, and then we'll go to Pat on that. What do you think, John?
Yeah, we've seen every other league do this, up to this point. I mean, Luis Perez is a perfect example. He was a star in the AAF. They created him. He continued that on pretty well, I think, for the most. He's still a household name if you watch these leagues. XFL obviously had Philip Walker, PJ Walker, and that receiver that he was thrown to. I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now.
Phillips,
yeah, there you go. Those are stars. They created him. And then even last year in the USFL, you had guys that became stars. Kevontae Turpin is a great example. These leagues have always been able to create those stars. So I don't think that's too much of an issue. I think that, you're always going to have, because you're going to have to lean on somebody from a marketing standpoint. You have to have those guys, and they'll create them for sure.
I like seeing Kevontae get more work with Dallas. I think their receiver core is pretty, but moving him not to just be the return guy. I think he had a couple, reps with that as well. Pat, thoughts on making stars? And I know that you've, and even articles on the Markcast.com have tracked salaries of players and the struggle of the leagues and all that kind of stuff. But what do you make of, can the XFL 2023 make stars?
I mean, not even the guys who go to the NFL, Boogie Roberts and Reggie Northrup of the USFL are 2 air quote stars that we have seen. I'd love to see those guys get local advertising deals when they do go to their respective markets, or even in Birmingham, because, I think Birmingham was a great example of the good that a league can do for these players, kind of make them local celebrities. Obviously, Scooby Wright was another guy that came out of, I don't want to say nowhere, because he was with the XFL and AAF, but those are the guys that you kind of want to build the league around. Taylor Heineke currently in the NFL is a star, but maybe what the XFL 2.0 tried to do with Landry Jones starting out to be the face of the league, especially the college connection he had to Bob Stoops. Maybe that's the move for, a guy like DeAndre Francois, if he can really grab hold of that QB1 position, which athletically he's going to knock it out of the park, but he usually rocks at high 50s completion percentage, which we'll see if that's good enough to, keep him a QB1 in the league. But it's not out of the realm to have guys who are strictly going to be in the XFL. Maybe De'Aaron King could be that guy if he comes back. Something to note about him is that Jacob Eason, their old practice squad quarterback, just got signed by the 49ers. So maybe this 1 week rental to put on your best Lamar Jackson impression might be a little bit delayed as far as bringing King back to DC, if that's where he's supposed to go. But for a lot of these guys, the league is their oyster right now. You know, I don't know how much we're going to see Anthony Russo or Jawan Pass get NFL looks. You know, they've done the whole rookie mini camp thing, but you know, there's a reason why they're not in the league. So if these guys really embrace their role, embrace the career and the opportunity they have to become, you know, social media stars, then it's a great look for them to build their careers.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Heineke was such a fluke, and like his time with Rivera, and then they like the COVID thing. And I will say the funniest thing last night, we're watching the Commanders and they won, and you know my wife's watching. And my wife watches every episode of the show. She is like, bless her, you know, doesn't have to do this. And we're sitting there at dinner after the game, and I'm like, hey, you know, it's just so cool with Heineke and the XFL and all that. She's like, wait, Heineke playing in the XFL? like, we talk about like that's why he's like the patron saint of the Markcast. I just thought that was really funny. But bless her heart.
There's one graphic of him. There's two. There's the video of him chugging Bud Light seltzers, and then there's him waving the towel. And I wonder how Jordan Teamu feels about that, because he also got signed and bounced around with the Chiefs and the Panthers of 2020, you know, never really getting a chance to stick. But people tend to forget Heineke was top tier FCS quarterback and, you know, didn't do too bad in his limited opportunities with Rivera, and had a short stint with the Texans, which he came in, did his thing, and then they threw Tom Savage back in there. So the Heineke story, like you said, is kind of a fluke. It's good marketing tool. I wish the XFL played it up a little bit more on their Twitter, but in due time.
I want to get Arlington's thoughts because I was on your guys' show this morning, kind of prefacing all this stuff. You know, Teamu is coming back. It's been reported. I think XFL analyst on Instagram. He's pretty locked in with a lot of the people that have signed letters of intent, all that other stuff. You know, your co-host Dirty said he didn't want him in St. Louis because he didn't know it fit with the scheme. But getting Teamu back, balancing that mix of getting new XFL guys, old XFL guys, kind of what do you make of Teamu coming in?
I will say this for fans would love it for the game, or being, excuse me, let me reiterate that. St. Louis fans would love having him back. But at this iteration, I don't think he would be fit best for St. Louis. Teamu looks like somebody that would be for like Arlington, maybe even Houston. You know what I mean? A Texas team would benefit him well, especially San Antonio playing in the Alamo Dome. If he doesn't get to St. Louis, I can see him in San Antonio for sure. That would be perfect. And then, airing it out. Maybe he'll get more opportunities to air it out, because I don't think he got a real fair shake in St. Louis. Chuck Long was working with him and stuff. So, I can't see anything better than him playing in San Antonio.
Yeah, it's going to be sad. I think San Antonio's a good one. John just went to go use the facilities real quick. I think San Antonio with the Rocks branding, with the Heinz Ward of it all, I think they have a shot to really be, you have the Battle Hawks. I don't know if the Sea Dragons retain that same, I think Seattle's going to support it. We had decent turnout with that, but what do you make at Arlington? And then we'll get Pat, the Brahmas kind of being that maybe second or third, the big XFL team to kind of cement this.
Yeah, and that's amazing, because I think everything that we're basing on is what happened in 2019 with the AAF. And if you remember, the Commanders had a pretty big crowd. And let's not forget Orlando. Orlando had big crowds too. So let's not completely push them away. They may not have had big turnouts at town halls, and they probably did that on purpose. But my belief is if you put a good team out there, they're coming. Orlando loved the Apollos in 2019. They were 7-1. The Commanders were 5-3, and had those two teams were the top attended teams in the AAF. So St. Louis might have something that they're going to have to fight for when it comes to attendance, because San Antonio that don't have an NFL squad, Orlando didn't have an NFL squad, so they're going to look for something that they're going to want to attend to, and they'll try and challenge St. Louis on that attendance.
Pat, what do you were at the town hall. What do you, I mean, I know ticket sales are incredible right now for, season ticket deposits, everything else for St. Louis. What do you make of everything there?
I mean, the Brahmas definitely have the clear opportunity to be the second franchise. I won't place all my bets on them overtaking St. Louis until we get products on the field, as Arlington said. But there is a reason why the NFL has looked at San Antonio as a decent place to put an NFL franchise. San Antonio is a real city. There are people there who are going to want to go to football games. Not too far away, about an hour, maybe change, is what? Austin, Texas. Just a quick drive down 35. And then you also have a college town in San Marcos, Texas State. I think if they could tap into even getting a Texas State player down there, now you're drawing people from there. I know some people have criticized me for saying, oh, people don't care about that, the local ties or anything, but as Arlington said, Akil Glass coming to St. Louis, I don't know if he's going to be a great quarterback, but I will know this: he'll bring at least 150 people there. Is that mind-shattering numbers? No, but every Joe in St. Louis, because St. Louis is such a weird city that when it comes to high schools, is going to go and be like, yeah, I played against that guy in high school.
Come on, man. Come on. You gotta lay off, man. Lay off, man.
Yeah.
You already know about that high school thing, man.
Oh,
come on.
God.
We love it. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah.
We always got to figure out what high school you went to.
Yeah.
And
everyone knew Calvin Munson in St. Louis. It's crazy. But different conversation for a different time. But I think St. Louis is clear in line for number 2. Wouldn't be surprised to see Vegas just because of the tourist pool. And you're like, after 3 nights of drinking, you're like, let's go to a football game. Why not? It's only $20. And then you get a couple bachelor parties in watching the Vipers play. And then you get some weird fans from Nebraska that are into the XFL now,
That's exactly about the Guardians, man. That's exactly how I feel about that. Because you remember, we spoke about this on the X-Fan show about getting packages for fans. Vegas makes sense. Orlando makes sense because of the ties that they have with Disney. The XFL has those ties. You put a package together and say, hey, you could come down to Disney World for a weekend and you can enjoy an XFL game to go along with it as your package. That would be something. Saturday or a Sunday game, a home game. You put those little things for the 4 or 5 games, how many home games they have during the season, put a little package together and say you can enjoy the game for X amount of dollars. That would be perfect in bringing in more fans to the game, especially football fans or casual fans that don't even think about playing football. Hey, I just want to go to a game. Why not? Or free ticket come involved with it. You know what I mean? Something like that.
I just had the funniest comment. I'm finally kind of just trying to track. Hey, is anyone messaging me to come on the show or anything on my Twitter? Harrison, one of our listeners, she's like, remember when you said that the XFL wouldn't spend all this money on scouting to bring back Luis Perez? And I said, I definitely did. I'm like, there's no way. They're flying to Hawaii. They're going to Jack. Like, there's no way. But I mean, he is. Oh, this is exciting. Hang on. This is going to be exciting. We have. Can you guys see backstage? Who's backstage, or am I the only one that can see?
You can only see that.
This is going to be good here. He's getting his camera set up. I think this is going to be a good one. But yeah, anyway, but I don't mind Luis Perez coming back. I just, I just thought like they're not going to want to retread. I'm glad they didn't retread too much from like we don't want to do the XFL 2020 thing. John, get your thoughts on that while we get this guest set up. Like that. They're okay because they've been so like, we don't want to deal with XFL 2020, but like they brought back some of their biggest stars.
Well, yeah, because that was their moneymakers back then, right? And the people that are going to be tuning into this league, a lot of them are, we're not all casual, football fans or football fans. There's some casual people that enjoyed the XFL, right? I know there's a guy, he's a good friend of mine through the Army and different stuff, and he doesn't watch the NFL. But he's able to watch the XFL and the USFL, and he tells me it's because these guys actually care, and you see it on the field. They're trying. That's the kind of audience that you're going to be bringing back. The people that watch that because of the old XFL, the USFL, they watch those because of that. And so to bring back some of the players that they're more familiar with, just it makes more sense.
We're getting the audio for this, guys. This will be worth it. Arlington, and I know we talk all the time about, they don't want to be too much like the XFL 2020. What do you make of this? I'm like, we're still okay with Silvers. We're still okay with the Luis Perez.
As long as it wasn't the eight quarterbacks like it was before, like I'm cool with that. Perez was a backup. He wasn't a starter. You got to remember he was under Matt McGloin. So, and Brandon Silvers was an original starter, and the other 6, I'm cool. I'm cool with what they did. Just bringing in a couple. You don't have to bring in everybody. Now, Te'amu were to come back. Te'amu does come back. Cool. I'm cool with that too, as long as everybody is not returning. Because Matt McGloin's not doing it. Landry Jones is not going to do it. So
better not be.
but my point is, it's fine. You don't have to worry about having all the quarterbacks from 2020 being involved, because this is a new set. But you also bringing in savvy vets that can help along with marketing. You can help with helping out the other young quarterbacks that are playing. So, and even they may start for themselves. So this is actually a good problem with having few than having all.
All right, let's give this a shot. I think we're just going to get audio, but my God, that's Mike Mitchell's music. That's Mike Mitchell's music. Mike, can you talk? Can you hear us?
I'm hoping this works. Can you hear me?
We can. You're set, man. You're a black box, but that's okay. What do you make of the draft
I don't know
today?
what the hell's going on here, because I've got a laptop set up here with 2 different phones and the computer on here, so I'm like juggling through. I'm juggling through a lot of different stuff. I think very good day for the XFL is my take on this whole thing. This is their first wave of quarterbacks, and I don't think people realize how difficult this entire process is. When I know it's the XFL coming back, but this is a new league. So when you get in the weeds and you figure out, how the league itself is trying to communicate with agents and players and all that, it's very difficult to convince guys to take the plunge and to make the move. So for them to, get the Sloters and Luis Perez's and the promising guys like Steven Montez, who's just recently working out for NFL teams, so watch out whether or not he signs with an NFL team there. But, the information I got today is one of the XFL teams is going to come away from this draft with 3 quarterbacks, and they already have a 4th quarterback that's currently on an NFL roster that's agreed to join them in January. So, and Monday night or Sunday night, I guess, I talked about Kyle Sloter with Arlington. It happened. And then Luis Perez with Las Vegas. He's reunited with Joey Clinkscales, who had him in the XFL with LA. And here they are. Those 2 guys have made the move. But I would say right now, everything, it's a good start-off group, but I think there's more to come with this. There's currently, I believe, 23 quarterbacks on NFL practice squads right now. So if people want to have fun and take a guess which one of those or more, I would say look at guys like Garrett Gilbert on the Patriots, Chris Strevler with the Jets. Kurt Banker got released, so he's been in talks with the XFL. Would not shock me if he's in Houston. That's a name that I brought up.
Oh, Mike just dropped off there. Oh, they've been that's disappointing. Here, comment. We'll get Mike back on. Most crazy day in spring football of the 4 quarterbacks. USFL lost to the XFL. Biggest loss is Sloter. All the others had system fit issues or quarterback who's arguably as good on the roster. Any reaction to that, John? We'll try to get Mike back on here.
I mean, to an extent, I think it's not so much the talent that they pulled that's the big deal. It's the fact that they pulled these guys and didn't bring them back to the USFL. I think that's the big statement, right? Because if guys don't want to come back to the USFL, they're going to go play in the XFL instead. They got to worry about everybody now, not just quarterbacks. That's the statement. That's the big takeaway.
I was curious too, Pat. Let's get your thoughts. Now that we see these quarterbacks, are we looking for more like, oh, I really want this receiver, anyone to go with that? I mean, kind of previewing tomorrow, we're going to be on here for the drafts. Like, are you more or less excited about any specific team? And I think Mike's logging back in here.
Well, someone I'm curious to see if he comes back is Austin Prohl, because his dad is coaching wide receivers. For the Battlehawks. So that'd be nice to see him. He's been in and out of NFL camps, practice squads, kind of in that receiver 6, receiver 7 life that a lot of these guys live. I know Martavis Bryant is also someone that should be coming back as well. He is in the draft pool. Recently, he was in the Fan Control Football League, and it's kind of crazy when you see a guy who was playing at a pretty high level go to fan-controlled football, even, just the crispness of his routes and just the physicality that a guy like that has. Jeremy Hill would be a nice guy to see back. I'm extremely excited. I kind of feel like he didn't maybe have the fair shake in New England. 1,000-yard rusher. Be nice to see him once more put on some pads. That's really it. Something I forgot to mention earlier, we were talking about the Vipers. Look at this. Look at the tandem that they brought in with Jalen McClendon and Luis Perez. We've seen that before. Perez rocked that in with the New Jersey Generals of Birmingham with him and DeAndre Johnson. So kind of interesting to see if maybe that's the approach they go with in Viperland.
No, that's a great point. I didn't think about that at all.
No.
Let's get Mike back in. There was a comment too. Today was a huge bish slap to the USFL. They censored themselves there. Mike, we got you back. Well, let's get you continuing on your train of thought.
I hope this works out. I heard the McClendon Perez thing. It's worth noting Joey Clinkscales had those guys with LA. And here's a crazy scenario which would make XFL 2020 fans laugh. What if Josh Johnson were to join the Vegas Vipers? He's on the practice squad of the Denver Broncos right now. Clinkscales had him in the XFL. Wouldn't that be crazy if Josh Johnson took Luis Perez's job again in Vegas? Maybe send Perez over to the Orlando Guardians. He could go back and play with the Guardians again, trade him over there. But,
nice.
Good Lord.
Nice.
Nice. So, history repeating itself. Boy, Perez would be bummed after that. But, I think it was a very positive first step for the XFL. Navigating these waters is very difficult. Convincing quarterbacks to join these leagues is difficult. And I think, buckle up, because this next month and change, December 31st, I've talked about that forever. You got the NFL guys that I already know. I don't know if you guys caught that on my last when I got cut off. But there's an NFL practice squad player that's already agreed to join an XFL team. That's going to be the fourth quarterback added, because some teams are going to walk away from this draft week with 3 quarterbacks. And there's one team that I know of that's going to add a fourth player that's currently on an NFL roster. So on a practice squad. So I think there may be some people that are not that impressed with this group. You got a bunch of young guys working with Jordan Palmer, which, by the way, how smart is that move on the XFL's part? You might be unsure about the Caleb Elabys and all these guys, but to work with Jordan Palmer, that's a pretty fucking good thing. Sorry for cursing.
Wow, Mike.
Spicy, man. You got spicy on.
So actually, if you don't mind me asking, Mike, because when we talked, you came on the JDV experience with me. This was probably 6 months ago when we talked about this potential situation with the XFL and the competition that would be with the USFL. How important, how big is that competition right now? How much is this going to hurt the USFL?
It's huge, because the USFL hired John DeFilippo to try to entice Slaughter to not go to Arlington. This is something that I mentioned XFL News Hub with Mark Perry on his show, which aired on Monday. I mentioned Slaughter to Arlington and Perez to Vegas, and here we are. And it's a big thing. It's tough, because when you look at it, right, who are 4 of the best USFL quarterbacks? And many would argue is Kyle Slaughter, Jordan Teamu, Luis Perez, and Brian Scott. What league are they going to play for next year? It's looking like the XFL.
Yeah.
So, I know it would be kind of crazy for Jordan to end up in Arlington with his former coaches there. Both his they got co-offensive coordinators with the Renegades. They're both his coaches with the Battlehawks. That's Long and Hayes. I know St. Louis fans wouldn't mind seeing Jordan there. But I think from this group, you got some neophyte quarterbacks. Maybe Orlando and San Antonio could use somebody like a Jordan Teamu. That's somebody to consider. You got to figure Brian Scott could be a Brahma when the smoke clears. That looks like so I wouldn't don't look at these quarterbacks like, oh, that's the finished product, because as I mentioned, there are teams that are going to have 3 quarterbacks when this is done, and they've got a 4th in waiting. So there's that. So yes, the competition, Vogel, I was on your show. Thanks for having me on that time. We had a great discussion. It's real. It's real. And they had to foresee this coming. They lost a lot of their coaches to the XFL. For a lot of the players that are in the USFL, I know for a fact over 200 USFL players have reached out to the XFL for employment. Mm-hmm. But the XFL's, it has to be reciprocal, right? So the XFL is not interested in that number of players. They have their eyes more on, Russ Giglio, Doug Whaley have done a tremendous job in this process. They have their eyes on a lot of young players. So because of COVID, there are over 700 players in the XFL's draft pool that are part of the 2022 NFL draft class. So, and then they also have players in the pool from the 2021 draft class as well as 2020. So it's going to skew younger, but you'll see some veterans sprinkled throughout. I've seen the Charles James was in the XFL, rumors about Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, the Martavis Bryant. So there might be some veterans in there, but you're going to see a lot of these rosters skew younger because over 1,100 of the players that are in the 1,700 player pool are from the last 3 NFL draft classes. So it's good for the players. You're going to have over 900 players playing spring pro football. So good for them. However long this lasts, it's really awesome for them. We're seeing in the NFL guys who played in these leagues continue to start and win games. How you doing, Taylor Heineke? So anyway.
This is going to be one of those things where, like, 2 months from now, when Brian Scott's announced to the San Antonio Brahmas, Mike Mitchell's going to be like, remember that time 2 hours and like 10 minutes into the podcast, and I said that Brian was, because like Mike it's the insider, but Mike also has like razor sharp memory of like, well, on April 2nd in that article I wrote,
yeah, I mean September 29th. There we go, Reed. September 29th. All these assigned quarterbacks today, the Drew Plitz, all of them. The Jawan Pass, all of them were assigned to teams. I reported where they was assigned to. So we got it today. Before Thanksgiving.
But do you really think Scott to San Antonio?
I think it's when you look at the other teams, right? I'm not saying some of these teams might not just load up. I mean, it'd be pretty crazy if like Jordan's with Sloter in Arlington. Drew Plitz gonna have to warm up the balls there for those guys. So. But I think you had him on the show, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful there. But that's a tough room if you got Jordan and Sloter there. But yes, Scott, you would look when looking at the current. I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see who gets taken in the open phase. I mean, I remember the XFL draft 3 years ago. June Jones, you had PJ Walker as his assigned quarterback, and then his first pick he took Connor Cook. Now it didn't work out with Cook, but who's to say that a Cole McDonald or a Carson Strong or one of these players can't be drafted in the draft pool in the open phase on Thursday? That's going to be fascinating because that's where you'll see the next group of quarterbacks because they're not in the skill position draft. So that'll be on Thursday. But, this whole process is fun. For a football nerd like me who loves college football, who loves the NFL to death, who loves the draft process, I'm aware of all these players. I've studied them for years. I'm really excited about the players. Like I'm hoping Abram Smith from Baylor, running back who was top 5 in the nation in rushing is part of this class. We'll see. Jareth Stearns from Western Kentucky, who played with Bailey Zappi, who led the nation in receiving. Be nice to see him. He'd be a heck of a receiver in June Jones' wide open offense in Seattle. So there's a lot of good talent out there. Less than 2% of all college football players make the National Football League. And these leagues continually produce good players. And there's a lot of good ones out there.
I want to get everyone's thoughts on this. Talking, this USFL, everything, like insane to me that they decided today was the day to announce the Memphis thing. Like I get that they're trying to, we did the Birmingham thing yesterday. We're trying to like combat that. It was the same thing before the XFL announced their head coaches the week of the USFL kickoff. But we'll start with John and go down the line. Like just then we see, here's your half your quarterback room is now in the XFL, like, but you have the Memphis up. Like thoughts on that was that they decided to combat it today and that was their combat.
That was 100% a combat, because you don't want to be forgotten. That's the hardest part right here, right now, is you're looking obscure at the moment because the XFL has a better television contract than you have right now. You know, they're going to have more games that are going to be more visible to people, just straight up off the board. You want to try to keep that hype going. You want to try to keep, hey, anything you can throw out there. Hey, new team, you know, or this team didn't work out in Tampa, so we're going to move over here to, you know, Memphis, and we're going to work out of that. Yeah, it's 100%. They timed it because of the XFL doing this today, and they're doing everything that they can to stay relevant. You have to, from a marketing standpoint. You have to.
Arlington, thoughts on that?
I mean, at this point, they're looking like they really are in trouble, man. Like to jump in, it's like what John said. To jump in the middle, you knew already from the get-go that this was going down. You knew that it was going to be a draft. So he was like, well, let me jump in real quick, throw a little bit of shade, and take a bit of the thunder away from the XFL. XFL standing strong. I know, listen, I'm not against the USFL. I want everybody to participate because think about it. It's going to be a year of football from January to December in 2023. It's going to be a year round of football, no matter what it is, pro or college, high school too, if you want to throw it in. There's going to be some form of football during 2023. So that is like, okay, I got to make sure that we're still around, folks. We're not really going anywhere. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what plays out with that.
Pat, then we'll get Mike, and then we have another caller here, and then we'll probably wrap up here pretty soon. I don't know how anyone else feels. Remember, we'll be on all day tomorrow, you know, sunrise to sunset, but I don't want to kill everyone today, especially John that's going to be back. But you guys let me know. If you're like, leave me alone. But let's get Pat, Mike, and then we do have one more caller here, and then we'll maybe start landing the plane here soon. Pat, are you there? All right, we'll get Mike's thoughts. Mike, on the USFL's, you know, the announcement today in the hub and all that.
Pat's a huge USFL supporter, so maybe he's left speechless after all this stuff. But but I'll say this much: like I'm an OG USFL guy. I enjoyed the first season of USFL last year. I like the Memphis Showboats. I remember Reggie White, all that stuff growing up as a kid. So, but today, you know, they're trying to throw shade, but in a way, you're throwing shade at yourself because within a year, you've already abandoned one of the teams you have. Although Tampa was never even playing in Tampa. And, you know, you're sitting there and you contracted a team today. So you got rid of one of your brands after 1 year. And so that's, you know, it's a cool logo. I understand the business move. They've got a stadium to play in. You know, they got a nice little business deal with Memphis, so that works out. The league they realize it. It's their number one primary goal is we have to get our teams into their own cities. They got to meet it halfway here. You know, we'll see. You know, I also earlier this month talked about the Detroit hub for USFL. It hasn't been officially announced yet that I'm aware of anyway, but I'm sure that's coming. But
probably started today while we were on here. They probably were like, we got to put out the Detroit hub.
A lot of players are not too happy about that. A lot of players on the wink northern teams that played in the South, the New Jersey Generals, the Philadelphia Stars, Pittsburgh Maulers, a lot of those players, if they're going to live in Detroit and they want to know what their housing situation is going to be, whether or not the league's going to cover that, they're going to get food. So taxes are higher. Taxes are higher in Michigan. So are they going to be in a bag of chips budget? So, you know, they got to figure, you know, the league has to figure that stuff out. Not a lot of players are happy about that you know, so anyhow, the thing is the contrast between the XFL and the USFL, the football is going to be good in both leagues. But the thing is when people tune in February and watch the XFL with fans in the stands, if you turn on a USFL game and there's, you know, like 180 people standing there watching a General Stars game in you know, in Detroit, that's not going to look like a cool happening league. That was the biggest problem with the USFL last year. It looked like they tried to pipe in crowd noise, but it looked like you were watching a scrimmage or a practice because there was no fans, no energy, no home fans rooting for their home team to win and prevail. So you need that atmosphere. The XFL is going to try to hit that. So if you watch that XFL atmosphere in February, March, April, then you turn on the USFL in May, June, and whatever, and you see, the Philadelphia Stars playing in Detroit, in front of no fans. If they're in Ford Field, that'd be an interesting visual. So anyhow, but yeah, it's not. Today wasn't a great. What the USFL should have been doing today, if they want to throw shade, is they should have added 2 new teams, but they're balling on a budget. So I don't think that's in the plans for them. That should have been. I know the Tampa Bay Bandits tweeted out, "Hey, we'll see you next, and we'll see you down the road. We're coming back." But so and they trotted out Brady White today, which was like a clear sign, like, oh no, they're losing Jordan. So as their new Showboats quarterback. So I don't think, they'll have the other announcements about the hubs. I think it's a positive step that they're going to have some of these teams playing in their cities. That's cool. I think the football will be good. But yeah, today wasn't a great day for them.
Pat's got last comments, then we'll bring in Jared, then we'll figure out. Pat, before you go, thoughts on all this stuff?
I mean, they kind of had to do something, right? The XFL, anytime a USFL thing came up, the XFL magically made a tweet, no matter how dormant their social media department was. So I get it. It's definitely not the best optic for sure. In the end, the key thing is getting USFL teams into the hub or into their cities and then start building a brand with these guys.
Pat, you're pretty breaking up there.
Well,
Pat,
one more time.
Yeah, I think there we go. Let's try one more time there, Pat.
So my big thing is obviously the USFL had to do something with the XFL announcing, the quarterbacks, losing quarterbacks and whatnot. The big thing is we all agree on is the USFL needs to get into the cities and they need to actually start making connections and giving people something to be passionate about. Something not to, scoff all that with Brady White is that he is currently a coach with the University of Memphis. He has Memphis ties. So, this is the best they could do with kind of the grand announcement of the XFL announcing some of their stars essentially leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Pat, thank you so much. We'll bring in Jerry to swap out. Then we'll land the plane here. Pat writes for News Hub, has a big article up right now talking with Coach Becht and everyone else over there. Really appreciate Pat. His time today. Jared's coming in hot, and then we'll figure out getting out of here. Jared, what Jared represents the fans. Jared, what do you make of the fans? How are we feeling?
Well, the Tampa Bay Bandits. I was going to go to a game down the road. I live in Fort Myers.
No, you're not.
I was in Fort Myers, Florida, and I was going to spend some money. I was going to possibly get some Tampa Bay Bandits merchandise. I was looking at last year, and Jordan Ta'amu at quarterback, and I was liking it a little bit. And now I'm not going to no games. I'm not going to be flying to no games for USFL. Now I can go to Orlando and cheer on for the Guardians. And it's just lucky that I was a fan of them just because of their logo in 2020. But yeah, it's a letdown. I mean, that's going to be the only thing in Florida for, the alt football leagues. And yeah, I'll go for the XFL all the way now. I'll still be watching USFL and respecting it, so, but they need to be in their own markets. I've said it, I've stretched it enough. They need to be looking behind their backs because XFL is going to be coming hot. They have the scouting. The scouting's been amazing. They're going to have the money now behind it with Disney and ESPN. So it's a serious issue for the USFL is what I think personally. And, I feel sorry for those Tampa Bay fans that pretended that they were going to have a team in their local market at some point, and now they're switching over to Memphis. So that was their decision. So they're going to pay for that probably.
I saw a lot. I want to get Mike's thoughts. Thoughts like, okay, is the USFL doing the draft here? Like who are they even going to draft? But they all these rosters are so full. And I was like, well, apparently half their quarterbacks. Mike, thoughts on that and what is the USFL next steps now?
it's difficult. They got Jim Pop there running. He's a director of football administration, so he has CFL ties. So one area they can hit that the XFL really can't is if they choose to. Depends on money. Is CFL free agents. CFL free agency doesn't begin until February. So if they want to target some, now I don't think they're going to be paying like top dollar for Sean Oakman or somebody who's probably going to get 6-figure salary as an all-star player in the CFL, but they'll definitely target that. They could theoretically pick up players that the XFL cuts because there's going to be quite a few players cut from down to 66 to 50 by the time the season starts. So you could target that. They could look towards, some of the players in because there's 1,700 players in the XFL pool. A lot of those guys are not going to get picked. So, you're talking about a league with whatever it is by training camp, 528 players. So that's, quick math there. That's a lot of players that are going to be available out there. So it's a little bit difficult. They have to adjust to this. They knew this. They had to know this was coming. I mean, that this other league is coming, and there's a lot of talent out there that wants to play for this league. You call it The Rock, Danny Garcia playing in their own cities, all that. So there's a lot of adjusting to be done here. USFL has good teams, good players. They had a good first season, but it's it's not a great day. You can celebrate it. It's not a great day when you abandon one of your teams, and then not that they were playing in their city anyway. Tampa was in the Birmingham Bandits essentially, but still you created the promise of these teams. They're just playing here for 1 year and then they're going to go in their cities. Wow. So
that's not happening.
That's not happening. So so we'll see how it goes. I think the football will be fine. It'll be interesting to see how they counter everything. But today's really all about the seeds that have been planted with the XFL. Good start for the XFL today, and tomorrow we'll start to see a lot more players join the league. So fascinating times for sure.
Yeah, you keep saying abandoned. I think of like There Will Be Blood, where it's like, I've abandoned my boy. I've abandoned my boy. I've abandoned my boy. Let's go one more time around the horn. We'll clock out. We're about 2.5 hours. I think we've talked to Drew Plitt today. John's been with me the whole time. We've had Brandon Silvers. A lot of different excitement today. Like I said, make sure you're subscribed tomorrow. Andy Murray is going to be with me bright and early. John's hopping on. I'm going to post everyone that's coming on the show tomorrow. It's going to be exciting. Let's get Jared. We'll get Mike. We'll get John, and then we'll say goodbye. And Jared, any last thoughts from you?
I'm surprised that Kyle Sloter's now in the XFL. I thought they would protect him, as a USFL staple. I rooted for him as a Denver Bronco fan during preseason a number of years ago. He was balling out for the Denver Broncos, and he had 300 yards in preseason, and I believed in him, and they cut him for some reason, and then he got his shot in the USFL, and I knew who he was, and luckily everyone else was able to see him until he got hurt or whatever. But he was shining, and for him to go over to XFL, I'm excited about it. I think it's good as long as he's protected. I think he'll be doing just fine.
Mike, any last thoughts from you today? I hope we get you tomorrow. I know you're busy doing all your other stuff. I appreciate you calling in, Mike. Any other thoughts from you? Maybe
it's just so much to unpack today. Can you guys hear me?
I can. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's so much to unpack today for sure. You guys did a great job, Vogel, Arlington, yourself, Reed. Always, it's awesome that you provide this for all the fans out there. The draft's going to be fascinating the next couple of days. I think the next month is very interesting. Start watching NFL rosters. Start looking at the 23 practice squad quarterbacks. One of them's already agreed to join the XFL. So, and then we'll see what happens to Kurt Bankert. I wouldn't rule him out being announced soon, by the way. So it's fun times. It's going to be pretty crazy these next few months, keeping track of all this.
John, you've been with me since the beginning today. Can't thank you enough. Truly a standout. Make sure follow John and the work he's doing. Any other thoughts from you today? It's been a whirlwind. I mean, this really has worked out really well, I think, so far.
Just well done across the board by the XFL, and the presentation. We commented on that a little bit. That was very nice, very well done. The live feel, obviously getting to sit down with Drew a little bit and just listen to what his mentality is going into it was great. And I think it's fair to say that that's where all these quarterbacks are right now. is they're just ready to get out there on the field. They're ready to go play. A lot of these guys have been waiting a little while to go. And then obviously the next couple of days are going to be a whirlwind too. And that's going to be, so we see this league come together. I couldn't be more excited for it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Come back tomorrow, and then I will be up in Regina. I think it's about 10 degrees up there right now on Saturday for the Grey Cup. We have a big show planned for that. Don't think I forgot you CFL fans out there. Mike, thanks again. Jared, your support messages all the time on Facebook Messenger. I appreciate that. Everyone else, come back tomorrow. I will roll the outro here. Let's get rid of that. And thank you guys all so much again, and we'll see you next time.